At 7:03 p.m. New York time, 4:03 p.m. Las Vegas time, Tupac Shakur passed away, y'all.
Stay with me on the line, okay? You found him on the bed, on the floor? Okay, listen, so I can help you. The only way we're going to help your friend is if you follow my...
Tonight we're learning the cause of death for Grammy-winning rapper Coolio. The 59-year-old was found unresponsive at a friend's Los Angeles home.
Rapper and actor DMX has died at the age of 50.
For decades, hip-hop has created some of the biggest stars the world has ever seen. Tupac Shakur, the notorious b.i.g, xxxtentacion, Juice WRLD, Pop Smoke, Nipsey Hussle, Takeoff, artists who changed music forever and inspired millions. But behind the fame, the money, and the success was a darker reality that almost all of them seemed unable to escape. Because one by one, rap legends kept dying young. Some were murdered at the peak of their careers, others lost battles with addiction, paranoia, violence, or the pressure that came with fame itself. And the deeper you look into their final days, the more disturbing the pattern becomes. From unanswered questions and conspiracy theories to warning signs hidden in interviews and lyrics, these stories reveal the terrifying dark side of hip-hop fame. Tonight, we're uncovering how every rap legend died and the tragic truth behind the music.
You know what? You want to know something funny? I knew this picture was going to resurface one day. I knew it was. I didn't know when it was going to come, but I knew it was coming.
Juice WRLD 999 was born Jared Higgins on December 2nd, 1998 in the windy city of Chicago, Illinois. And a year after his birth, his family, they moved to the south suburbs in an area known as Homewood. In one of the few still public posts about his childhood from his birthday last year, the caption it reads, "Still got the same devious facial expression as I look at the world. Blessed to see 20, pray to see many more." Damn, yeah, that hits hard, and we're just getting started. Now, his parents, they split up when he was still a toddler, and from there on out, him and his older brother, they would only see Pops from time to time. Now, he lived with his mom, but he had a key to his dad's place, but for the most part, it was a one-parent upbringing. In fact, he told Billboard, "I didn't have a man giving me no type of guidance. My father wasn't in my life like that." In a throwback photo of him, and I believe the other guy is his brother, the caption it read, "Polo and some cheap trues, me and my mom shared a room, clean shoes, only 2 pairs, ain't know what to do. Cuzzo drove a Jetta, good condition with no legroom. 2 sad songs later, got a pocket full of dead dudes." Now, he would credit his mom regularly for her hard work in raising him, and she was very religious and forbid him from listening to rap music. He told Complex, "My mom was a real conservative on some old hardcore Christian shit."
I grew up around a lot of I grew up in a Christian household.
Yeah,
so
I feel
my
you,
mom,
man.
she
Me too.
stayed playing gospel music and stuff.
Now, he learned to play the piano at a young age, and he followed this up by learning to play the guitar, the trumpet, and the drums, which he initially fell in love with through Guitar Hero. Now, he also enjoyed Tony Hawk Pro Skater, and through video games like this, he was first introduced to rock music. He found an early interest in artists like Panic at the Disco, Black Sabbath, Fall Out Boy, Billy Idol, Paramore, Black Veil Brides, Senses Fail, Bullet for My Valentine, and more.
Bro, what? Yes, hell yes, bro. This is like one of my biggest influences. Like, my mom put me on him. She loves Billy Idol. Like, this is raw as fuck.
Now, growing up with access to the internet, it allowed a young Jared to explore a plethora of new music. From Weird Al Yankovic's parody of Smells Like Nirvana, that opened up the doors for him to fall in love with the real thing and start smelling some teen spirit for himself. In the 5th grade, he developed his first hardcore crush on a girl who was obsessed with emo music. Now, naturally, this only enhanced his interest in the genre and to connect with the lyrics and songs about heartbreak, angst, depression, and more. Now, that same year, he was also diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, and his mom, she put him on Ritalin and Vyvanse. Now, this is something he later regretted. He told Vulture, "I look back at it and I'm like, wow, that was not okay. I'm in 5th grade. What am I doing taking Vyvanse and Ritalin? How is a 5th grader supposed to act?" Now, against his mother's wishes, young Jared, he began to discover more urban sounds introduced to him by his brother and his cousin. Now, he started heavily listening to rap artists like Jeezy, Gucci Mane, Big Sean, and Lil Wayne, but his personal interests, they gravitated more towards artists from his native Chicago. This included Chief Keef, Lil Durk, and Kanye West's 808s and Heartbreaks, it quickly became one of his all-time favorite albums.
When I moved, I would go back, and as my cousins grew up, they were older than me, but as they grew up into their teen years, they used to listen to, Weezy, Gucci Man, stuff like that. Young Jeezy was an inspiration. Gucci Man. I mean, when Chance the Rapper came out, that's an inspiration. Shout out to Chance.
No wouldn't be long before he would begin experimenting with other drugs not prescribed by a doctor, but instead those he was learning about through his music.
Hearing that music at such a young age, I was trying to sip lean in 6th grade. Listening to Dirty Sprite 1.
Slowly but surely, he began to freestyle for his friends by the 6th or 7th grade, and he was writing his own lyrics and spitting rhymes at lunchtime.
Kid, I spit heat fast like a crackhead. Thinking that you want it, but you don't know this. Focus. Now I got ADD now, swarming like locusts. Who is this? Making hand signs like he deaf or something.
He attended Homewood Flossmoor High School, and it was there in his sophomore year that he began to take his rapping seriously. He told Elevator magazine, "I used to just do that freestyling for fun, but then my friends started telling me I could do this for real. So I started taking it seriously when I was about 16. Now high school had also opened up the door for new experiences. While his friends were smoking weed, he began dabbling and taking perks and Xans. Now these are drugs which at the time, Juice, he admitted they weren't even cool. He just liked the way that they made him feel.
I ran into some Percocets my freshman year. This was calling me and my homie Clucks, right? 2 years later, 3 years later, Future dropped 56 Nights. By the way, Future is the GOAT. Future dropped 56 Nights. This is hitting my phone like, will you get all them perks from them Xans, like, cause of some music.
Now initially he rapped under the name Juice the Kid, and he was inspired by one of the greats, as he explains it. I used to have a juice cut, like you know Tupac from the movie Juice. That was also around the time I started rapping for real, and I was just thinking about names and I was like, I'ma go by Juice, since I got the juice cut. It was just corny enough to work. Honestly, I'm not even sure where the word world came from. I was just trying to be creative. Now Juice the Kid, he also got to work putting on shows for his peers, with his first ever live performance taking place at a Chicago rec center. Now the crowd, which was comprised of classmates and friends, well, they were receptive to his music, and for his efforts he earned $100 for his performance. Now he also gave the odd interview to his friends at a school who were starting a radio show, and this gave him his first opportunity to freestyle to a live audience.
Freestyle game crazy. I'm finna make it insane.
Insane.
Couple words off the brain, switch it to the membrane. I shoot threes like Steve Nash, yes boy, I straight drain. People say I'm crazy, but my bars going insane. You hear me on the radio, spitting radio waves. I thought I told you, homie, nothing would ever be the same like the Drake. People hate. I said to their face, get it straight. We can't relate. Relate like belated. You run up on me, that's okay, cause I ain't even complaining. I'm the man around here. No graduation. Run up on me, that's okay. I'll make it rain on the beat, so I guess on the track it catch precipitation.
Now I gotta remind you that he had to do all this without uttering a single swear word. Now his initial recordings he made via his iPhone, and he began uploading these to SoundCloud back in 2015. Now tracks they included Make It There, Lost My Mind, and his very first release, which was Forever, that now boasts over 4.7 million streams. Now with his music career starting to prove promising, well, he had little interest in going on to college.
My grades were up in high school, and it was time like to, you know, for colleges to start looking at motherfuckers, and I wasn't on any like sports teams or none of that. So I'm like, bro, what the am I gonna do after high school? Like, you know, and I'd be sitting in my room just going crazy over this shit.
Throughout high school, he kept recording and releasing music, but his dedication would take time to pay off. Now he actually ended up working at a factory for a short period of time, but he quickly realized that that wasn't the type of future he wanted for himself, and he was eventually fired. Now speaking on this short stint, he stated, "Bro, that shit was horrible, I hated it, 9 to 5 wasn't for me at all. The people were tripped out and it made me sad because there were people there that have been doing that shit for 20 plus years." Now during his senior year of high school, one of Juice's videos, it ended up getting 10,000 views. This was the moment when he first thought he had made it. He began working with producer Nick Mira after joining the collective Internet Money. Now Juice said that Mira was one of the first people to help him improve as an artist, and together they created the track Too Much Cash. Now the song that would change everything for Juice WRLD, of course, was Lucid Dreams, a song that was recorded within 15 minutes and lyrics that are now known the world over. Now first Juice, he had no idea that the song, it bared similarities to other works of art that would cause him legal troubles once money started being made. Now speaking on this, he told Vulture, "My mom told me that the song sampled Sting, so I went back and listened to his version. I haven't heard from Sting, but he said publicly that Lucid Dreams was a beautiful interpretation of Shape of My Heart." Now uploaded to SoundCloud, the track had immediately found an audience with over 2 million streams. Now it also got Juice some attention from Chicago's very own Lil Bibby. Now Bibby was the first to go all in, taking on the then relatively unknown artist's career to the next level. He put money in and resources where his mouth was, and he signed Juice to Grade A Productions. From there was a bidding war amongst various labels, with Interscope ultimately coming out on top with a reported $3 million deal. In 2017, the world got Juice WRLD's 3-song EP, Nothing's Different, with the official release of Lucid Dreams, All Girls Are the Same. And from there, well, he was working with the likes of Lil Uzi Vert, Cole Bennett at Lyrical Lemonade, and he would perform on Jimmy Kimmel. Now, it wasn't long before he was getting nominated for BET Award for Best New Hip Hop Artist and an MTV Video Music Award. He won a Billboard Music Award for Top New Artist, he toured with Nicki Minaj, and put out 2 studio albums, Goodbye and Good Riddance and Death Race for Love. There was also the track Legends, which is likely going to go down in history now following his passing. Now, in the track, off his 2018 Too Soon EP, well, he paid tribute to Lil Peep and XXX, where he rapped, "What's the 27 club? We ain't making it past 21. Now, he also rapped about his own drug use, and he called himself the Codeine Cobain. Now, on his 2018 track, Waiting for the Drugs to Hit Me, well, Juice rapped, "Codeine in my cup, I carry it to every city." Now, while doing interviews, Juice, he was open to talk about his own history of drug use, and he was vocal about his own strides at sobriety.
I would tell myself to stay as far away from drugs as possible.
In a 2019 interview with NME magazine, well, the article's writer, Jordan Bissett, he noted that Juice WRLD was drinking a homemade concoction of Sprite mixed with Listerine. Now, in that interview, he stated, "Drugs can ruin your whole life if they don't kill you. They can leave you in a trance for the rest of your life. Most effing rappers rap about getting high and feeling great, but I talk about the good side and the bad side, just to shed some light on the negative side." On December 2nd of 2019, Juice had celebrated having made it to his 21st birthday. Now, after having those lyrics in his track Legend about making it to 21, I'm assuming this was some kind of accomplishment. Then on December 8th, 2019, while flying a private jet from Los Angeles to Chicago, well, Juice was seen in the last known video footage of him alive, and he actually looked happy and lighthearted. What we know now is that the feds, they had been watching the young rapper and his entourage for over a month, and they were tipped off by the pilot about the possibility of guns on board the plane. Now, what appears to have been an act to avoid charges of possession, well, Juice WRLD, he injected as many as several unknown pills inside his body. Now, this inevitably resulted in a seizure, and despite paramedics' efforts to revive him, well, he was pronounced dead at 3:14 a.m. in Advocate Christ Medical Center in Oaklawn, Illinois. Now, a bottle of codeine cough syrup, it was also found on the plane, and 70 pounds of marijuana was stashed away in suitcases. The world woke up Sunday morning to the tragic news, and famous friends and fans took to social media to share their condolences. Tupac Shakur was born Lassane Parish Crooks on June 16, 1971 in East Harlem, Manhattan, New York City, New York. The son of Black Panther activist and high school dropout Afeni Shakur, Afeni being the daughter of a North Carolina housemaid. During her pregnancy with baby Tupac, Afeni was actually in jail on bombing charges, and he was born 1 month and 3 days after she had been acquitted of all charges, which included conspiracy against the United States government and New York landmarks. For real. She was successful in defending herself in court, displaying her intellect and prowess in public speaking. And you know what they say? Well, the apple, it doesn't fall far from the tree. Tupac has a stepbrother, Mopreme Shakur, 2 years his senior. His parents lost contact when Tupac was 5, and he would have no contact with his biological father, Billy Garland, until he was 23. He actually grew up thinking that his father had died. His mother's next partner was another Black Panther activist by the name of Mutala Shakur, who is the father of Tupac's half-sister Sakia. He's also the man responsible for Tupac's surname, Shakur. Unfortunately, it would be only a few short years before Mutula would soon exit the picture as well, probably because he was on FBI's 10 most wanted list starting in 1982.
It wasn't easy for me not to be with them. It wasn't easy for me to give up my life for this struggle.
Tupac's birth name of Lassane was abandoned by his mother early on, and she took to calling her boy Tupac after the South American revolutionary Tupac Amaru, who led the indigenous revolt against Spanish rule. This revolutionary would eventually be executed by his oppressors. The name Tupac Amaru means shining serpent in Arabic, and Shakur, well, it means thankful to God. But what does the name mean to Tupac? Let's take a look.
That's my reminder. Every time you say my name, that's my reminder to never compromise myself and never quit. There's no such thing as a truce while people ain't free, regardless of who it is.
Tupac had a difficult childhood, moving frequently around the New York City boroughs of Brooklyn and the Bronx, often staying in shelters. He received an early education in radical politics from his mother. Throughout his youth, he also explored acting and became a member of the 127th Street Ensemble, a Harlem-based theater company, and he was cast as Travis Younger, a character in the play A Raisin in the Sun, which was performed at the Apollo Theater. As a teenager, his family relocated to Maryland, and after completing his second year at Paul Laurence Dunbar High School, he then attended the Baltimore School of the Arts, where he studied acting, poetry, jazz, and ballet. He was considered one of the most popular kids in school for his sense of humor and his skills as a rapper. And these are remarks that were given by one of his dearest friends at the time, Jada Pinkett Smith.
I don't think either one of us really thought that we would have made it in the way that we did.
Tupac and his family would relocate once again, this time to Marin City in California, where he attended Tamalpais High School, which is in nearby Mill Valley, and it was there that he filmed this very intimate interview. It was in California where his strong mother succumbed to an addiction to crack cocaine, which had become an epidemic throughout the nation. She would buy her drug off the same street corners that her son would sell it for pocket money. How awkward. Now in the late 1980s, Tupac was gaining more notoriety for his talents than for his bad behavior. Focusing on poetry and rap, he went under the name MC New York for a short period of time and was quickly signed to join the hip-hop group Digital Underground. At the time, the group was gaining nationwide airplay with their song, The Humpty Dance. Tupac appeared on two of the group's recordings, 1990's This Is an EP and Sons of the P, but all wasn't sunny in California. In October of 1991, Tupac filed a $10 million civil suit against the Oakland Police Department, alleging that they brutally beat him up just for jaywalking. It was around this time he decided to push forward as a solo rapper, this time under the name Tupac, spelled with a 2 and a capital P. He then landed a deal with Interscope Records and dropped his debut album Tupacalypse Now. The track, Brenda's Got a Baby, reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot Rap Singles chart. He also got pressed when the then Vice President Dan Quayle condemned his lyrics from his track Soulja Story, which rapped about dropping a cop. It was Tupac's second album, Strictly for My N.I.G.G.A.Z, that crossed over to the pop charts with singles I Get Around and Keep Your Head Up. The album went platinum, selling more than 1 million copies. With his music career taking off, Tupac began to focus on his second passion, which was acting. He starred in the 1992 urban crime drama Juice with Omar Epps, Samuel L. Jackson, and Queen Latifah. Then he played the love interest to Janet Jackson in the street romance flick Poetic Justice. This was in 1993. He was set to play a lead role in Menace to Society, but got into a beef with the co-director Alan Hughes, which resulted in an assault charge and 4 days in prison. In 1994, he played a drug dealer in the basketball drama Above the Rim. He also auditioned for the role of Bubba in Forrest Gump, but sadly, he didn't get that part. He would later audition for the role of Mace Windu in the Star Wars prequels, but this would be a role he was unable to take due to his untimely passing. Despite all this success, Tupac's name was becoming synonymous with gang violence. There was a fight in Marin City where his gun was dropped and then discharged, leading to the death of a 6-year-old boy. Then in 1993, he was involved in an altercation in Atlanta, which resulted in 2 off-duty drunk cops being shot. Then Tupac fell on the other side of violence, getting shot 5 times in the lobby of a recording studio during a mugging by 2 men. On attack, Tupac was certain Bad Boy Records had some plan. Now you would think that this would create some sympathy for Tupac, but in mainstream media, his name was associated with negative news and headlines. For example, there was a Texas youth who shot a state trooper, and his explanation was that he had been influenced by Tupacalypse Now. In the summer of 1994, Tupac bumped into Keisha Morris at a New York City nightclub. The two hit it off and exchanged numbers, but their courtship was put on hold while Tupac was on trial for 18 different charges. In the end, he was sentenced to 1.5 to 4.5 years in prison for sexual assault. Tupac was heavily influenced by the written works of Shakespeare and Niccolo Machiavelli. He also got married to Keisha Morris, but this union would be annulled 10 months later. He dropped Me Against the World in 1995 while in prison, which hit number 1 on the Billboard 200, making Tupac the first artist to accomplish this feat while serving a prison sentence. While in prison, he was always visited by Suge Knight on numerous occasions. Suge offered to post the $1.3 million bail Tupac needed to be released, pending his appeal, under one condition, that Tupac signed on to Death Row Records. Tupac agreed and was released in October of 1995. In 1996, he released his double-length album All Eyes on Me, this time working with Dr. Dre and Death Row Records. Off this album, we got the classic California Love, which went on to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. By the end of 1996, the album had sold 5 million copies and had been certified 5 times double platinum and eventually would become diamond certified. This was a busy year for Tupac, and he continued acting, starring opposite Mickey Rourke in Bullet, sponsoring South Central sports teams, at-risk youth centers, and setting up a telephone helpline for troubled youth. On top of this, the feud between East Coast and West Coast was reaching a tipping point. Tupac, along with Outlaw Immortals, released the diss track Hit 'Em Up, with a lyrical assault on Biggie and Bad Boy. In the track, Tupac claimed to have had sex with Faith Evans, Biggie's wife at the time. On September 7th, 1996, Tupac, along with Suge Knight, they attended a Mike Tyson boxing match in Las Vegas at the MGM. Here's the final footage captured of Tupac and his right hand and thigh in a drive-by shooting. He died 6 days later on September 13th, 1996. The killer was never caught. One of the rounds went into Shakur's right lung and he died of internal bleeding. Machiavelli, the Don Killuminati 7-Day Theory, which was meant to be an underground record, was released, and due to his tragic passing, it became another hit for the artist, this time from beyond the grave. Malcolm James McCormick was born on January 19, 1992 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he grew up in the Point Breeze neighborhood. He came up in a creative home. His father, Mark McCormick, he worked as an architect, and his mother, Karen Myers, well, she was a photographer. Malcolm's family is Jewish. He had a bar mitzvah, and he celebrated the Jewish high holidays. Now, because of his religion, he described himself as the coolest Jewish rapper. Of course, Mac Miller would soon find a few Jewish peers with Drake and Lil Dicky, but back when Malcolm was growing up, well, the only Jewish rappers that anyone had heard about were the Beastie Boys. And like them, well, Malcolm's first foray into music, it wasn't in hip-hop. According to some old family videos, well, he was a born performer. During his tween years at Winchester Thurston School, Malcolm had dreams of becoming a singer-songwriter. He learned how to play the guitar, but apparently no one was a big fan of his singing. Still, clearly he was musically gifted. Now, Mac, he taught himself to play the piano, the drums, and the bass. But he would stumble upon his musical destiny by chance at the age of just 14. He and his boys, they were hanging out smoking weed, a beat was playing, and for the first time ever, well, Malcolm, he spit a freestyle. Now, it was better than anyone expected, and soon enough, he was hooked. Well, not to weed, but to rapping. Okay, to be honest, to a little bit of both. Now, according to his friend Jimmy, they had been smoking for quite some time. I'm 2 years older than him. We smoked our first cigarette in the 3rd grade. We both smoked weed for the first time in 5th grade. Around the time he started rapping, Mac found other passions that would last for years. He met a girl in 8th grade who he would go on to date from junior year to high school until, well, basically he met Ariana. Now, Mac, he would later explain that relationship, well, it would inspire his project Macadelic. Macadelic was all about us, this love, drug stuff, how love and drugs are the same thing. Our relationship was f***ing me up. It made me think of myself as a bad person. We're no longer together. In terms of musical influences, Mac has listed A Tribe Called Quest, Lauryn Hill, Beastie Boys, Outkast, Big L. Well, those are some of his earliest influencers. For high school, Mac attended Taylor Alderdice High School, which was formerly attended by rapper Wiz Khalifa. He graduated the same year Mac would have been entering the freshman year, but the two, they would soon connect to be frequent collaborators. Now, to be honest, Malcolm, he wasn't the best student. He would cut class for a week and months at a time, and when he did show up to school, it usually wasn't to attend class. Instead, he would hand out CDs or freestyle with his buddies. Now, on the rare occasion that Mac found himself inside the classroom, well, he would use the time to write lyrics in his notebook. He would pull all-nighters to do the same, and to fund his studio time, well, he would resort to petty theft. Now, one of the earliest videos of Mac Miller rapping that I could find on YouTube is titled Hallway Freestyle, and this is from 2009. And back then, he said that his sound and style has evolved over time. Talking about his high school days, he stated, "I was a grimy ass rapper, all my shit was angry white rapper, 10th grade angst." At the age of 15, he had already created an entire mixtape titled But My Macking Ain't Easy. And despite his self-criticism, well, Mac's talents were on full display, and the man was also a workaholic. He released a mixtape in 2008, 2 more in 2009. He would also feature alongside Killer Mike on the 15 song, May the Force Be With Yo. And he also worked as the one-half duo of The Ill Spoken. It makes sense, well, that he didn't have much time for school. Another thing Mac tried to do to make some extra money for studio time was drug dealing. But apparently, well, he wasn't too good at it. He would sell really shitty weed and promise his clients that it was high grade. Unfortunately for him, well, he'd be inheriting some money. That's right, his grandfather passed away while he was a high school senior, and Mac had enough money to get his own apartment, which apparently, well, was located right next to his high school, his buddy Jimmy said. It was hilarious. He would never go to school even though he lived right next to it. Mac graduated from high school in 2010, and that summer he would release his mixtape Kids, a project that would change his life, and record companies, well, they had already began taking notice of the young up-and-comer. In advance of the mixtape's release, well, Mac signed with Rostrum Records and dropped the project with the label. Included on this would be his first real single, Knock Knock, which would chart Billboard, peaking at number 88. All of a sudden, he was taking home awards at the Pittsburgh Hip Hop Awards. Also in 2010, Mac went on tour for the first time, called the Incredibly Dope Tour. But while on stage in 2011, he and his friends were arrested after getting caught with some weed. Now Mac, he had found instant stardom. He released 4 singles that charted the Billboard in 2011. Party on Fifth Avenue would be certified gold, and he would get his first platinum single with the Trist alongside artists like Meek Mill, Big Crit, b.i.g, Yellow Wolf, and Kendrick Lamar. On November 8, 2011, Mac released his debut studio album, Blue Slide Park, and the project was certified gold, selling 100,000 copies in its first week. And of course, that album would climb to number 1. Now the kid, he had literally made it to the top of the game. His next big accomplishment was a little lady on his arm. Ariana Grande and Mac Miller, they first hit it off via Twitter, and the two, well, they started recording music together soon after. They were on a Christmas song together. Then Mac jumped on her track The Way, and this absolutely blew up. It was on the set of this video shoot that they shared their first kiss, and from there on out, well, it seemed the two were madly in love. Business was good for the most part. Mac would go on to release 3 hit studio albums between 2013 and 2016. In 2014, he left Rostrum Records after independently releasing Faces, and he revealed that his label Remember Music, well, they had signed a deal with him and Warner Bros. Records for a reported $10 million. So business was really good. But there were signs of underlying issues. Tracks on the mixtape Faces gave ominous lyrics about hard drug use and musing over premature death. On the upside, his relationship, it looked hot as hell. The two worked on a handful of tracks together, and when Ariana was involved in the Manchester bombing incident, well, Mac was there at the airport to kiss her well. But we all know, well, there were problems going on behind the scenes. Now last May, Miller caught a DUI after crashing his Mercedes-Benz G-Class in Southern California, and well, then he went silent on social media. Ariana, she tweeted out, "Take care of yourself," and later went public about the breakup, making it clear that addiction was part of the problem. "I am not a babysitter or a mother, and no woman should feel that they need to be. I have cared for him and tried to support his sobriety and prayed for his balance for years, and always will, of course. But shaming, blaming women for a man's inability to keep his shit together is a very major problem." Now, there was a lot going on for Mac Miller at this time. There were legal issues that were settled out of court. Of course, he had his addictions, lean, and other drugs. Also, he was struggling with the pressures of fame. The man had lost his identity.
So you trying to make me, right? No doubt. Yeah, word. You doing good too. Bumping there. Yeah, that's word.
Larry Coleman was born on May 30th, 1974. He was the third and youngest child of Gilda Terry and Charles Davis. However, his father left the family when Larry was still a child. He had 2 siblings, Donald and Leroy, who gave their little bro the nickname Little L.
And once again, it's the Big L, that kid who got much props for killing corrupt cops with motherfucking buckshots.
He was raised in Harlem at 139th and Lenox, an area known as the Danger Zone.
When no man can withstand the whole zone.
That's due to its crack cocaine culture. Well, young Larry, he stayed out of this because the man was obsessed with hip-hop. He began freestyling at the age of 12, and then he would go out onto the streets, not to get involved in the gang culture, but instead he wanted to rap battle his peers. Coleman attended Julia Richmond High, and as he got into his teens, he was faced with the temptation of quick money on the streets. Instead, he decided to focus on his rap as his way out. He founded his own small rap crew known as 3 the Hard Way in 1990, but this group would fizzle out because the other people he was working with, well, they got caught up in gangs and drugs. Now around this time, Little L, he decided to switch up his name, and he was going to be known as Big L. He also bumped into another artist by the name of Lord Finesse at a record shop, and that's when he decided, well, this is his shot, and he went for it. Initially, he sent a friend to show Finesse his mixtape, who said, "Talk to my manager, and if he's nice, we'll talk then." But Big L, he came to the conclusion that wasn't a good enough answer.
So L sends him back. So my man said he'll rhyme for you right now. If you don't like him, he won't ever bother you again.
Finesse and Big L, they exchanged phone numbers, and when Big L would go on to graduate from high school, well, he would join up with one of New York City's best underground hip-hop groups known as DITC, or Diggin' in the Crates crew. It consisted of rappers, DJs, and producers like Lord Finesse, Diamond D, and Fat Joe. Now the name comes from them going around to different record shops where they would be looking through bins for samples that they could lay their tracks down to. All of a sudden in 1992, well, Big L, he had his first track on Lord Finesse's Yes You May.
And then Show and AG threw me on their album.
That's right.
You know, I was winning rap contests like it was nothing.
Around the same time, Nubian Production, well, they had held a freestyle rap battle competition. 2,000 people showed up, and Big L, he was crowned the victor.
Rappers I clap and lynch, nobody can fuck with the way I be killing them shit and rap events.
That is when he signed a deal with Columbia Records. The first single, Devil's Son, was released in 1993. Now the inspiration behind this single, well, Big L, he was a massive fan of horror films. Also, he states that he had seen some pretty ugly things while growing up in Harlem. While working on his upcoming album, Big L founded Harlem-centered rap group Children of the Corn. This was formed with neighborhood friends and fellow Harlem rappers Cameron, then known as Killa Cam, Herb McRuff, Cameron's cousin, Derek Bloodshed, Armstead, and also Mace, who at the time he was known as Murda Mace, but I got a funny feeling he now goes by the name Father Mace. That's what I heard. Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous was released in 1995 and would have 3 singles, Put It On, MVP, and No Ends, No Skins. And it featured guest appearances of a young Cameron and Jay-Z.
I shake, rattle, and roll and wreck shit like none, and beat a nigga ass half silly on the one.
Now upon its release, this small album, it received a positive reaction from music critics. It also earned for Big L a reputation as a strong lyricist and a guy who was fantastic at wordplay. It was also financially successful in the beginning, but then after about 5 years, it only would go on to sell about 200,000 copies. The following year, he would get dropped by Columbia Records. Him and his label, they weren't seeing eye to eye. He later went on to state, "I was there with a bunch of strangers that didn't know my music."
There's no comparison, son, just embarrassing. I'm running with some of the baddest men in the whole New York.
Big L then began to work on his second studio album known as The Big Picture in 1997. He also formed his own independent label known as Flamboyant Entertainment. He released the single Ebonics in 1998. He was also reportedly in talks to sign with Jay-Z's Rockefeller Records, but sadly, his story ends there.
Ask anybody from Eminem on down, all the real lyricists, they'll tell you about my boy, and my boy is wicked. Nobody is fucking with my nigga, Big L.
On February 15th, 1999, Big L, he was fatally shot 9 times in both the face and the chest in a drive-by shooting. Initial reports speculated that his assailant wanted vengeance against his older brother, a rumor which would be confirmed in an interview with his brother Donald in 2010.
Both of us is gone, and he was out here by himself, so you can't get one brother, you got the other one, you know what I mean?
Originally, Gerard Woodley, one of Big L's childhood friends, was charged with the murder, but then he was released because of insufficient evidence. The murder case has never been solved and is surrounded in controversy. Now, Big L's manager, he decided to put together that album, The Big Picture, and release it, and it would go on to become certified gold. As for the rest of the story, well, there's actually a documentary being made about Big L, and it's set to be dropped in 2016, so be sure to check that out.
Harlem has really never been the same since Big L dropped.
Eric Wright was born on September 7, 1963 in Compton, California. His father, Richard Wright, worked as a postal worker, and his mother, Kathy Wright, she worked as a grade school administrator. Eazy lost his virginity as young as 12. By the age of 13, he was hanging out on the streets, and that's when he picked up the name Eazy-e. He got involved with the Kelly Park Compton Crips, and then he was selling drugs just like his cousin, mainly selling weed. Now, although Eazy-e grew up in a stable household, his parents were allowing him to sell weed, and he was doing a good job making enough money. He didn't really need to go to school. He'd also pass his time in his parents' garage where he would record music. By the 10th grade, he had dropped out of William Howard Taft Charter High so he could focus mainly on his dealing and his music. Eazy-e would go on to father his first child by the age of 20. Now, being short in stature, he had to compensate on the streets, so he used his business savvy to get ahead. By the age of 22, well, he had banked an estimated $250,000. Then all of a sudden, Eazy-e's cousin, the one who had taught him how to get into drug dealing, well, he got shot. And Eazy-e came to the conclusion that he had to diversify his business portfolio. Now, he had always had the idea that rap would be his next option, but it wasn't until he bailed out a hardworking local DJ by the name of Dr. Dre would he have the opportunity to start making moves in the industry. Now, Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, they had a beat and a track written for another group who eventually turned it down. All of a sudden, Eric Wright, he was going to perform on the mic as Eazy-E, and all of a sudden they had their track, Boys in the Hood.
My father jumped up and he started to shout, so I threw it right across and knocked his old ass out.
The early success of this single had Eazy-E set up Ruthless Records as well as start up a partnership with Jerry Heller, the former manager of Journey, Otis Redding, The Who, Black Sabbath, and many others. Other rap artists soon joined NWA, including DJ Yella and the DOC, and their group released their debut album NWA and the Posse in 1987. Now, to fund this whole operation, Eazy-E had invested $250,000, but off that one album alone, he would see a return of $1 million. The next year, the group dropped Straight Outta Compton. The disc went on to earn double platinum sales. On this track, there was the album F the Police, and this one resulted in an FBI letter being sent to Ruthless Records. The group was at their peak of success, but it seemed that Eazy-E was the only one getting the recognition and the money. It was Eazy-E and Eazy-E alone who was invited to the White House in 1991 to meet with the then President George W. Bush.
Eric Wright is his real name, waiting in line today to hear Law and Order man George Bush at a private, members-only reception.
As the story goes, Ice Cube, he would depart from the group, followed by Dr. Dre. For Dr. Dre to get out of his contract, he enlisted the help of his bodyguard, Suge Knight, who convinced Eazy-E of the release with the help of some baseball bats and lead pipes. Eazy-E was now a solo act and released It's On Dr. Dre 187 Killa, followed by Straight Off the Streets of motherfucking Compton. The three original NWA members, well, they were exchanging blows with one another on their tracks, on national television, as well as in their various public appearances.
They go in the studio and all of a sudden become hard when they used to do dance music.
How many niggas out there like Eazy-E? Fuck Easy motherfucking E!
Eazy-E would continue to work on his solo material. He was also hosting a radio show and appeared on In Living Color in 1994, but then his health suddenly began to deteriorate. In 1995, after Eazy-E was hospitalized for what was thought to be asthma, it was learned that the rapper had contracted AIDS. At a Hollywood news conference on March 17, 1995, he let the world know that he was in fact HIV positive. Rapper Frost, who was signed to Ruthless Records, he has recently gone public on his thoughts on how Eazy-E contracted the disease.
He got hurt in Honda Valley on quad runners. They gave him tainted needles with acupuncture. I was told even in the last conversation from Eazy not to even talk to that man. I don't want to say that name because it's the devil's name.
While on his deathbed, Eazy-E married his longtime girlfriend Tamika Woods. She was pregnant at the time with his second child. Nor Tamika or the child, neither of them contracted the disease. Eazy-E died on March 26, 1995, 1 month after the initial diagnosis. At his funeral, more than 3,000 people were there in attendance, but it was only DJ Yella from NWA who paid his respects. Eazy-E was buried in a gold casket. Instead of wearing a suit, he was in jeans, a flannel shirt, and a Compton hat. And the rest of the story? Well, the rest of the story, it lives on in his music, and his work, and I guess a little bit of Ruthless Records.
I can't live a normal life. I was raised by the state.
Hip-hop legend Coolio, the man that once lit up the charts with massive hits like Gangsta's Paradise and Fantastic Voyage, has died at the age of 59. Born Artis Ivy Jr. on August 1st, 1963 in Monessen, Pennsylvania, which is just south of Pittsburgh. Coolio moved to Compton, California as a kid and then spent his teenage years growing up in the northern part of the state, where his mother sent him after realizing that Compton was far too dangerous of a place for her son to spend his childhood. In past interviews, Coolio has suggested that he first became a fan of hip-hop after hearing Freedom by Grandmaster Flash in the Furious 5. He was captivated by the flow of rapper Melly Mel and would do his best to imitate that iconic style when he first started rapping at the age of 15. Within 3 years, Coolio says that he knew that hip-hop was what he wanted to do with his life, but he'd wind up attending Compton Community College and working as a volunteer firefighter and as security at LAX before devoting himself to his true passion. But that digression has not without its benefits. In fact, becoming a firefighter wound up saving Coolio from falling too heavily into the drug scene, and he once told the Los Angeles Times in 1994, "I wasn't looking for a career, I was looking for a way to clean up, a way to escape the drug thing. It was going to kill me and I knew I had to stop. In firefighting training was discipline I needed. We ran every day. I wasn't drinking or smoking or doing stuff that I usually did. Once he had control over his habits, his rap career blossomed in the 80s, and he found himself immediate fame in the underground scene performing as Coolio, a handle that he adopted after a conversation with a friend who asked him, "Who do you think you are, Julio Iglesias?" Turns out, that's exactly who he thought he was. And after cutting his first single, What You Gonna Do, and getting it played at a local hip-hop station, Coolio connected with Dub C and the Mad Circle and contributed to their 1991 debut album, Ain't a Damn Thing Changed. Now, with more exposure than ever, Coolio signed a solo deal with Tommy Boy Records in 1994, and then released his debut album, It Takes a Thief. That project would be catapulted by its lead single, Fantastic Voyage, to the top of the Billboard Hot 200 chart, peaking at the number 8 spot before going certified platinum. And while Fantastic Voyage may have been the song that put Coolio on the map, he wouldn't blow up until the following year, with the release of the seminal Gangsta's Paradise. This song is a cultural staple, and Coolio's biggest hit song of all time was a single from the 1995 film Dangerous Minds, starring Michelle Pfeiffer as an ex-Marine who becomes a teacher working on a pilot program for bright but underachieving teenagers in a tough inner-city school. The haunting track that Coolio would fashion for it samples the Stevie Wonder song Pastime Paradise for its chorus, a song that Coolio was not all that familiar with at the time, despite the fact that Wonder's 1972 album, Music of My Mind, was the very first record that Coolio ever bought. So, bit of a full circle moment. He explained to Rolling Stone, "So it was kind of weird that I didn't know the song. I went back inside my manager's house to use the toilet before I rolled out, and that's when I heard the track. I walked into the studio and asked Doug, 'Wow, whose track is that?' Doug said, 'Oh, it's something I'm working on.' I said, 'Well, it's mine.'" The resulting single, Gangsta's Paradise, would become Coolio's biggest hit of all time, growing his star to gigantic proportions and winning him a Grammy while staying at the #1 spot on the Billboard charts for 3 weeks straight. Even today, in the age of streaming, the song has continued to live on, and in July of 2022, it reached a massive milestone by achieving 1 billion views on YouTube.
It entered into my body, and I wrote it, and I recorded it, and it was done, and...
I reckon you picked up the signal on your hair.
So, and
straight to the arm and onto the paper.
I am connected.
The legacy and cultural impact of Gangsta's Paradise would become wide-reaching. It even inspired a parody song by Weird Al Yankovic known as Amish Paradise. Initially, Coolio objected to this comedic take on his hit, but in the years to follow, he'd admit that he made a mistake in reacting so harshly, and he made amends with Weird Al. And while Coolio would never again have a song nearly as big as Gangsta's Paradise, he had further hits with 1996's 1, 2, 3, Something New, and 97's See You When You Get There. His career totaled 4.8 million album sales along with 978 million on-demand streams of his music, according to Luminate. He was also nominated for a total of 6 Grammy Awards. As his commercial success in music faded, Coolio transitioned into becoming a TV personality, placing 3rd on a German talent show involving artists looking to make a comeback in 2004, and popping up in Celebrity Big Brother in 2009.
I appreciate it because that's the most flattering thing someone can do is to imitate someone else, okay?
It's the most flattering thing you can do to someone, imitate them.
And you had a dickhead up yours.
Yes.
Food was also a huge passion in Coolio's later life. He'd release a cookbook in 2009 called Cooking with Coolio, and compete on the Food Network series Rachel vs. Guy, Celebrity Cook-Off in 2012, ultimately placing 2nd.
I'm no joke in the kitchen.
You aren't, are you?
I'm no joke. I don't play around. I'm the ghetto gourmet, baby. My cooking show is called Cooking with Coolio. Today, I am going to show you how to get your kids.
He even had his own short-lived reality series on Oxygen called Coolio Rules, which ran throughout 2008. Of course, Coolio didn't leave his music career behind completely. In fact, he was active in the scene right up until his death, touring with other 90s stars including Vanilla Ice and Young MC, with all 3 of them having performed in Texas as recently as a few days ago. He was always ready to hit the stage no matter what, even on something off the beaten path as daytime Irish talk TV. This hilarious clip from the mid-2000s shows him performing next to an Irish production crew, after the television station booked him by mistake, confusing him for his namesake, Julio Iglesias. In a sense, that little moment more or less sums up Coolio's life in a nutshell, a professional who is willing to do whatever it took to entertain others. And now, will never get to experience his unique brand of energy again. On Wednesday, September 28, 2022, Coolio's longtime manager, Jerez, says that the rapper went into the bathroom at a friend's house, but then failed to re-emerge after an extended period of time. His friend tried calling out for him, but when there was no response, they eventually entered and found Coolio lying on the floor. The Los Angeles Fire Department and paramedics then responded to a call on 2900 block of South Chesapeake Avenue at 4 p.m. local time. When they arrived, they found Coolio to be unresponsive and performed resuscitation efforts on him for approximately 45 minutes to no avail. Coolio was pronounced dead just before 5 p.m. The official cause of death has not yet been determined, but reports suggest that paramedics on the scene believe that Coolio passed away from a heart attack. Coolio's talent manager, Sheila Finnegan, would send out a statement that read in part, "We are saddened by the loss of our dear friend and client Coolio, who passed away this afternoon. He touched the world with the gift of his talent and will be missed profoundly." His friends and associates would also take to social media to express their remorse over what happened, like rapper Vanilla Ice, who responded with absolute shock, especially considering he had just been performing with Coolio only a few days ago. Even Weird Al Yankovic would share a photo of the two men hugging out their differences with the caption, "R.I.P. Coolio." And then there was Michelle Pfeiffer, who penned a touching tribute to the artist on Instagram, going so far to his claim that he was the very reason Dangerous Minds found so much success.
Lil Peep was born Gustav R. on November 1st, 1996. Although Pitchfork claims that he originally hails from Pennsylvania, Gustav spent the majority of his childhood growing up on the South Shore of Long Island, New York, in what he affectionately called the shittiest fucking suburbs ever. Lil Peep's mother is of Irish and German descent, while his father is of Swedish and German ancestry. His mother teaches first grade. His grandfather is a professor at Harvard, while his father is a professor at Hofstra. Gustav grew up with an older brother and both parents until he was 14 years old. At that point, his father left the family, and after that, well, Peep, he never spoke to him ever again. Despite growing up in a family of teachers, Gustav was never particularly interested in education. His high school had a closed campus, so to cut class, which he did frequently, Gustav hopped on a 20-foot fence and ran from the school's on-duty security guards. On top of hating class, Gustav didn't like his classmates, he told Fader. They were like the stereotypical high schoolers from the movies. It's hard to find people you f. After Gustav dropped out of his high school but continued his education through a computer course that required only a single essay a week, his mom usually ended up writing them for him, but eventually he got his diploma. During this time, Lil Peep spent a lot of time alone in his room listening to punk and rap music. He suffered from depression and suicidal thoughts, demons he would continue to battle for the rest of his life. But according to him, the internet and underground rap circuit saved his life. Gustav got into listening to underground acts on SoundCloud and YouTube, which inspired him to try doing it himself. He bought a $200 microphone and started to record directly on his MacBook, the same computer he would use for the rest of his life. And for production, well, he used GarageBand. While he originally created his YouTube account back in 2013, his oldest video still available on his channel is from 2016, and his oldest SoundCloud song dates back to 2015. That year, he was 19 years old, so his earliest self-produced songs have likely been wiped from the internet. As of right now, the oldest available song is Veins, produced by Grief. But a few months after posting his first song online, they began to receive thousands of plays. This was the first glimmer of hope for Gustav that he may have a future in music. As for school, that wasn't going so well. He enrolled in an online local community college, but needless to say, it didn't hold his interest. He dropped out after a single semester. The only thing really holding his attention was his budding music career, as he told Pitchfork. School was forced the whole time, now it's apparent that it was never very necessary. To pursue his ambitions, Lil Peep moved out to Los Angeles, hoping to pay his rent with his SoundCloud rap career. He had a dozen roommates in his apartment in Skid Row, but still his music wasn't paying the bills, which forced him to return to Long Island. But before long, he'd be returning to LA, where he would continue to reside until very recently with his girlfriend Layla. In 2015, Lil Peep dropped his first two mixtapes, Lil Peep Part 1 and Live Forever, and his extended play Feels. 2016 would see the release of 4 new EPs, Vertigo, California Girls, Teen Romance, and Castles, as well as 2 mixtapes, Cry Baby, and his breakthrough project, Hellboy. By this time, he had teamed up with artists Jay Green and Ghostmane to form the Schema Posse Collective. They had begun working together while Peep was still in high school, but in April of 2016, the group disbanded after a public breakup via Twitter. After this falling out, Lil Peep would join Goth Boy clique with artists like Lil Tracy, Cold Heart Doves, and JP Dream Thug. In 2017, Lil Peep would drop Castles 2 and move to London, England, where he finished work on his debut studio album, Come Over When You're Sober Part 1. The album was dropped that year and features some of his most popular songs like Problems, Awful Things, and Ben's Truck. In August of 2017, Peep came out as bisexual on Twitter. Lil Peep would maintain a close relationship with his mother throughout his life, although she was never able to persuade him to kick his more dangerous habits. Lil Peep used cocaine, Molly, heroin, and Xanax. Even before his recent tragic passing, there were signs that his drug abuse, well, it was getting out of control. As far back as February of 2017, he tweeted, "I am a depressed drug addict and I'm nearing my breaking point. Everything I love is disappearing." Still, he remained a productive artist, touring widely to perform for his growing legion of fans. In one of his last Instagram posts, Lil Peep put out a video message to his fans in El Paso, telling them that he would be seeing them that night. In the video, he also mentions the drugs he had just taken.
I took 6 Xanax and I was lit. I'm good, I'm not sick.
Just hours later, on November 15, 2017, Lil Peep passed away. He was just 21 years old. His manager, Chase Ortega, broke the news via Twitter saying, "I've been expecting this call for a year, motherfucker." Numerous other artists paid tribute to Lil Peep via social media. Diplo, he tweeted, "Peep had so much more to do, he was constantly inspiring me." Post Malone directed this message to Peep, writing, "In the short time that I knew you, you were a great friend to me and a great person. Your music changed the world and it'll never be the same. I love you, bud, forever." Bella Thorne addressed Peep's fans saying, "You guys know how talented he was, you guys know how good he was. Well, he was even more f***ing great as a person." Sarah Stennett, CEO of First Access Entertainment, which partnered with Peep in early 2016, released a statement about his death which said, "I've spoken to his mother and she asked me to convey that she is very, very proud of him and everything he was able to achieve in his short life. She is truly grateful to the fans and the people who have supported and loved him." Now on Sunday, March 31st, Grammy-nominated rapper Nipsey Hussle, he was gunned down and killed outside of his clothing store. He was 33 years old. But Nipsey Hussle, he was much more than just a rapper. He was a philanthropist, actively involved in reducing gang violence in his community by consistently calling into question the high murder and incarceration rates, as well as being a symbol of hope and success for those who came from similar circumstances. Now, he also helped start an art initiative in his neighborhood called Destination Crenshaw, which will be a 1.3 mile long outdoor art experience celebrating black culture in Los Angeles. In short, Nipsey Hussle used his platform to inspire others to better themselves, which is why news of his death to gun violence is devastating to so many. Now, it hasn't been a full year since the passing of X, who died under similar circumstances, and something tells me it probably won't be the last. Now, there are thousands of gun-related deaths in the US each year, so tragedies like Nipsey Hussle and X, they only serve to highlight the issues and encourage solutions to the problem. And, well, they're not meant to cast a shadow over the countless victims of gun violence that don't have the same media exposure. This is why it's so important for me to deliver this story responsibly. This video is not about taking a stance regarding gun violence, nor will it focus on the controversies that may have surrounded his name. It's about following Nipsey Hussle's lead and turning this platform into something more positive. With that being said, we will not be monetizing or running any ads on this video. We are only looking to share the legacy that this great rapper is leaving behind. We hope you see this video how it was intended to be, which is a tribute and a celebration of his life. Thanks.
We look at life like it's about what you can get from life. And I think, I read something, I was like, that's not what it is. You're going to always be unfulfilled if you look at life like that. It's about knowing you're going to leave one day. And, when you leave, the only way you're going to be fulfilled is if you know you gave everything you had.
Nipsey Hussle was born Ermias Ishgedem in Los Angeles, California on August 15th, 1985. Now, he found out a few years ago that his birth name, it means God will rise. He cites Crenshaw and Slauson as the place that raised him, also known as Rollin' 60s. His mom was born and raised in LA, while his father is of Eritrean descent. Now, his parents, they split when Nipsey was as young as 3 or 4 years old, so he grew up with his brother and was raised by their mother, uncle, and grandmother.
What I like to say all the time when they ask questions of that nature, I just be like, I grew up
better than some, worse than others.
In 2004, Nipsey traveled to Africa and Europe with his brother and father for 3 months to explore his family's roots. Now, his father was born in East Africa, so it was there that Nipsey met his grandmother and cousins for the first time. Now, he says the trip really gave him a better understanding of where he comes from. He told Complex, "I was raised in our household in my formative years, but as I got older, my pops tried to keep me involved with the culture by telling me the stories of the conflicts between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and how he came to America and about our family back home." Nipsey was always interested in music, listening to the radio, CDs, and buying Source magazines. When he first started rapping, he would listen to a Snoop or Dre album and fill in different words over their beats. By the time he was 12, he was already searching for original beats. At 13, his mom found out about a program at the Watts Towers in LA where they gave kids free studio time, which helped him record his own project later on. Now, Nipsey, he took his stage name from the comedian and actor Nipsey Russell.
You've seen those pictures of the tribesmen? They have the bone in the nose that looks like this?
I've seen something even more savage than a man with a bone in his nose.
What's that?
I've seen a woman with rings in her ears.
His mom would pay their bills, but Nipsey, he needed to find his own way to provide himself with new kicks and nice clothes. So when he was around the age of 14, he started to hustle full-time. Now, in middle school, he played basketball a little bit, but his grades weren't good enough for him to pursue this sport any further. In a 2010 interview with Parlay Mag, well, Nipsey said that his mom, she got remarried, but he wasn't very fond of his new stepfather, so when he was 14 years old, he was out on his own. He stated, "I moved with Granny for a little bit, then on my own for real. By 15, 16, I started getting into the gangbanging and street life. But my mom's always stressed school and education. She put me onto prison, and just being a black man in America, being in the streets at a young age, LA is a real place. I was exposed to everything: killing, dope selling, police, jail shit, politics in the hood. I had a front row seat to it all." By 15, he became a member of the Rollin' 60s neighborhood Crips and claims to have made hundreds of thousands of dollars from hustling before ever making a dollar from music.
Yeah, basically before my deal and before I really had an outlet to get my music out, I was just full-time hustling and part-time rapping. Like I always had a passion for rap music, and I was always trying to create the situation to where I could do this full-time.
But around that same age, well, Nipsey, he was kicked out of Alexander Hamilton High School for an alleged robbery of the school's computer lab. Now, Nipsey, he told Complex that he didn't do it, but he was still forced to attend a boot camp program through the Lenox Sheriff Department for juveniles. After getting kicked out of school and attending that program, he still wanted to get an education, so at 15 years old, he took classes at community college in West LA, where he enjoyed studying English, psychology, and philosophy, all things that translated into his music. He was getting A's and B's in college when he was still of high school age. Even my English teacher got at me and was like, "Are you plagiarizing this shit? You're 15 and quoting Plato in your essays? What's going on?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm just into it." Eventually, he dropped out of community college to pursue music full-time. Now, his goal with music was to give an update on LA for people who only understood what was going on in the city when Pac and Snoop were coming up. But once he realized that the lifestyle he was living was only going to end in one of a few ways, well, he got out of the game and started saving his money to work on music. He sold all of his cars, all of his jewelry, and really invested in his craft. He bought Pro Tools, an Apple computer, and studio equipment so that he could really focus on creating freely at a high level. Now, at the same time, he was trying to only spend $20 a day to save the rest for his music. So that left him with $10 for some weed and $10 for something to eat. Nipsey dropped his first mixtape, Slauson Boy Volume 1 in 2005, which would later become the name of his own record label. Now, once he established Slauson Boys Records, he negotiated a distribution deal for himself, being only 18 years old. Now, clearly, Nipsey, he showed signs of being a successful entrepreneur from a very early age.
He actually bought us out. The independent deal we had, cause we had an independent deal with a company called Sailfish, and what they is, they like the #1 online digital content distributor.
In 2007, he also played a small role in Bone Thugs and Harmony's I Tried short film.
I've been busy, dog. Busy. Too busy to pay my sister some respect, though.
Nipsey would continue to hustle, but now selling his mixtapes out of the trunk of his car and do all of his own street marketing.
Cause we didn't damn near did it on every angle. We was independent. We printed up a CD on our own, street money out the trunk, printed up posters, put the posters up ourselves, all in the wrong hoods, hopping out late night, stapling posters on the corners.
His acting career continued, appearing in the movie The Wrath of Cain with Ving Rhames in 2010.
How you been, son?
Man, don't son me. What's happening?
Now Ving, he actually heard Nipsey's mixtape through his stepdaughter's iPod. She only had Lil Wayne and Nipsey music at the time, and he took a listen while on a flight to South Africa. It was around this time that his name started bubbling up all over Los Angeles, and word of his movement made it all the way to the jailhouse, where a guy named b.i.g was serving a 25-year sentence. Now b.i.g, he used to manage Corrupt and was plugged in with Snoop. He heard Nipsey's music, and after only serving 13 years of his sentence, well, he got out and started to manage Nipsey. They took his music to all the major labels together, but he told Complex after liking the music, well, labels would always get a call that said, yeah, them is the 60s, that's b.i.g, that's another Suge, don't do it. And I can imagine with Suge's rep, well, that wasn't something most people wanted to deal with. Now Hustle, he also spent some time in county jail for a couple of months in LA after they raided his clothing store that he had started to sell his signature Crenshaw merchandise out of. Now he said since there would be about 50 dudes out front, well, the police were suspicious of the activity going on in the parking lot. Nipsey would put all of his money into his studio to make it the top grade. On November 17, 2006, well, the police, they also raided his studio based on an investigation into his brother. And the studio, well, it had about 100 to 200,000 grand worth of equipment in there at the time. Following the raid, well, he was back to ground zero and felt like he had nothing. But shortly after getting out of county jail, he signed a deal with Cinematic Music Group through Sony and Epic Records. John Shapiro from Epic heard about Nipsey after DJ Felly Fell told him that Nip was the next big artist from the West Coast. The deal was through Cinematic Music Group, a label that Nipsey was actually the first ever artist on. He spent his advanced money on a lawyer and went to Jamaica for a week since he couldn't do much in LA.
I started off on the run. I signed my deal on the run, went to Jamaica, came back to LA, went to jail, got out, and then went to New York and started what's going on right now.
In 2008, Nipsey dropped 2 mixtapes, Bullets Ain't Got No Name, Volumes 1 and 2, and the second tape actually featured a beat from Kanye West for the song All for the Dough. Now his debut major label single was called Hustle in the House. The single started getting play on LA radio, but Nipsey said that there was also a lot of people complaining that it was promoting gang culture, so some stations slowed down on the spins. Now right after So Far Gone was released, well, Nipsey was featured on Drake's song Killers. You can even find an old tweet where Drake says, Nipsey Hussle is the hardest out. The two reunited years later for Meek's Going Bad music video. He was also featured on Snoop Dogg's album Malice in Wonderland on the song Upside Down along with fellow LA native Problem. Now at first many people thought that Nipsey was Snoop's cousin or nephew because of their similar sound, speech and looks. Well, Snoop, he even wanted Nipsey to play him in Straight Outta Compton, but Hustle, he declined because he wanted to pave his own path. On the Snoop feature, he told Complex in a 2010 interview, Snoop didn't ask me to sign to him, asked for no percentage, asked for no cut, and he more or less just took his visibility and his celebrity and co-signed and spoke real highly of me as opposed to being like, oh, this young dude. They always talking about he reminds them of me. So I respect Snoop even aside from the music, just as a man. The Game was also someone to give him an early cosign on Power 106 Radio and even taking him on his LAX World Tour. Then Nipsey was also featured on the 2010 version of We Are the World for Haiti, which also featured a young Justin Bieber giving his vocals to lead off the song. Now the same year he was also selected to be a part of the annual XXL freshman class alongside artists like J. Cole and Wiz Khalifa. He was planning on releasing his debut studio album under the label in 2010, but later that year Nipsey and his label parted ways due to creative differences and he founded his own label, All Money In. He released his first project after becoming newly independent called The Marathon, and he followed that up with The Marathon Continues. Although it was rumored that he would sign to Rick Ross's Maybach Music, he never ended up inking an official deal and continued to move independently.
I just had a concern with my team getting credit for breaking Nipsey Hussle. So I didn't necessarily want to take that from my team.
Nipsey told fans that the third installment of his marathon series would be called the Marathon 3 Victory Lap, but if you know the rest of the story, the album didn't drop quite right away. In 2013, he said that Victory Lap would be his debut album, but instead his next release would be a mixtape titled Crenshaw. The project would be sold as physical copies and bundles that included autographs, a ticket to a private concert, merch, and meet and greets for $100 a piece, and only 1,000 total copies being released. The campaign was called Proud to Pay and was marketed as supporting independent artists that rap fans truly believed in. And well, he had a fan in Hove, because Jay-Z, he bought 100 copies of the album. And if I'm doing my math correctly, well then from Jay-Z's purchases alone, Nip, he made himself a cool 10,000 K. And he also made $100,000 by selling all 1,000 copies, one of which, well, it was scooped up by a lady named Lauren London. But we'll get into that a little bit later in this story. Now, he used the money to fund his All Money In label, staying true to his name, and he told Kareem Seville that the title Crenshaw, well, it was one word that could represent who I am. It's a foundation to who I am. It's a foundation to my personality and my story. It's where it took place at. In 2016, he founded the Marathon Agency along with business partners Kareem Seville, George Penci, and Steve-O. But not the one you're thinking from Jackass. Another one. Now, his Marathon clothing store, it had done some really innovative things as well, including creating a digital smart store. He credits his brother for the idea of starting a clothing store in the first place. Now, Nipsey, he dropped off the Mailbox Money mixtape in 2014, and he continued to work on his debut album. Following his format, he sold 60 copies of his mixtape at $1,000 each. That same year, he began a relationship with actress Lauren London. Now, although they released a public statement about splitting up, they have since been photographed together many times. They admitted their relationship to the public less than a week ago, appearing in GQ video in which Lauren asked Nipsey 30 questions. Together, the two would welcome a son named Cross, born on August 31st, 2016. He also has a daughter named Imani from a previous relationship. In 2018, he announced a joint partnership with Atlantic to release his label debut, and after 5 years, well, the world finally received Victory Lap, and it didn't disappoint. The album sold over 50,000 copies in its first week, and it landed at the number 4 spot on the Billboard 200 charts. It was also recently nominated for Best Rap Album at the Grammys, and while it didn't win, the album received critical acclaim, with many rap critics and fans alike calling it the rap album of the year. Now, outside of music, Nipsey, he had made big moves to give back to the community that he came from. His streetwear brand and his store, the Marathon Clothing Smart Store, was opened in 2017, located on Slauson Avenue in the same area he grew up in. Sadly though, it was here on Sunday, March 31st at around 3:25 p.m. that Nipsey Hussle was shot and would later succumb to his wounds after being rushed to the hospital. The world of hip-hop and entertainment took to social media, sharing their grief simultaneously. The impact of this man's music, his philanthropy, and his artistry were heard the world over, and memorials were held all over the Los Angeles area. In the later years, Nipsey Hussle, he had done everything he could to turn his past experiences and newfound notoriety into a means to give back to his community. He would meet with investors and city council figures in order to grow local businesses and inspire new investors to bring businesses into the Crenshaw area. The day before his passing, he was scheduled to meet with the LAPD to discuss methods of preventing gun violence. He'd also been working on multiple documentaries. No cover given behind the scenes look into touring, and a documentary on Dr. Sebi, a herbalist and self-proclaimed healer who believed that he had found the cure to AIDS. Now, in a now chilling tweet, Nipsey posted, "If they kill me for this documentary, y'all better ride." At the time of this recording, law enforcement officials have released a photo of who they believe the culprit is in this heinous crime. Now, we hope this case gets resolved as quickly as possible, and we send our sincere condolences to his friends and family. Now, Nipsey Hussle will not only be remembered as a great artist, but also as an inspiration to those looking to turn their life around for the better. Biggie Smalls was born Christopher George LaFour Wallace on May 21st, 1972 in St. Mary's Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. He is the only child of Sulin George LaFour, a welder and local politician back in Jamaica, and to his mother, Valletta Wallace, a preschool teacher. Now, young Christopher, he was raised alone by his mother, growing up in the neighborhood of Bedford-Stuyvesant. Now, his mother, she took to calling her young boy Chrissy Pooh after Christopher Robin in Winnie the Pooh, which is kind of a similar story to how Snoop Dogg got his name. But I'm glad Notorious B.I.G. he didn't blow up as Biggie the Pooh. Be weird. He attended the Queen of All Saints Middle School, where he excelled as a student. He picked up several awards for his work in English. He was also a fantastic illustrator and popular amongst his peers, who took to calling him Big. Why? Well, you know why. Now, Biggie's mother was working multiple jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads, which allowed young Biggie to explore the streets in his local area. There he would interact with countless drug addicts as well as drug dealers, and he saw for himself a little opportunity. He began selling drugs as young as 12, and by 13, well, he was smoking blunts and making cream. Whatever the hell that means, I have no idea. By the time he was 15, he had established himself as a full-time crack dealer. but people were no longer calling him Big. By now, people were calling him Biggie Smalls. Yeah, that's a moniker he picked up from the 1975 film Let's Do It Again. Felt that he wanted to change, and he was tired of his baby lotion soft. Roman Catholic Bishop Alawan Memorial High, so instead he attended the state-funded George Westinghouse Career and Technical Education High School. There he would walk the hallways alongside DMX, Busta Rhymes, and Jay-Z, and although the later of those two they would be doing rap battles during lunch, well, Biggie, he didn't get involved, he didn't collaborate, he was too busy working the streets. In 1989, he was arrested on weapons charges and sentenced to 5 years probation. The next year, he was arrested for violating that probation, and then was arrested dealing crack and spent 9 months in a North Carolina prison. He would get frequent visits from his childhood gal pal Lil Kim, who he would stay close with until the very end. When Biggie got out, he decided to take his rapping extremely seriously. He began recording his own demos in the basement. He also teamed up with the rap collective known as Old Gold Brothers. Now quickly, Biggie Smalls began to build up a strong reputation in his local area, and that homemade demo he made, it got into the hands of Mr. C, who was a well-known DJ and began playing some of his tracks. From there, The Source, they picked him up and ran an article on Biggie Smalls. Sean Puffy Combs at the time, he was working for Uptown Records, and he heard about this young up-and-coming rapper, Biggie Smalls, and he took interest. He got Uptown to sign them, but then Sean Puffy Combs would have his own falling out with the company, so him and Biggie would take a huge risk with Puffy starting his own label known as Bad Boy Entertainment. Now Biggie Smalls was ready and eager to make a name for himself nationally, but he soon discovered there was another rapper out there by the name of Biggie Smalls. That's when he decided to call himself the Notorious B.I.G. Biggie did some work with other artists. He appeared on a 1993 remix of Mary J. Blige's single, Real Love, as well as What's the 411. He also had his own debut solo with the single Party and Bullshit. Around this time, his longtime girlfriend, well, she gave birth to his first child, Tiana. Then at the age of 21, Biggie Smalls got to work on his own debut album, Ready to Die. This was recorded mainly at the New York City The Hit Factory recording studio. That was around this time Biggie decided that he would freestyle his raps via memory rather than writing them down in a notebook. Why? Well, the guy was probably paranoid that someone would be stealing his work. Then in September of 1994, the Notorious B.I.G. released his debut album Ready to Die. This told the story of his life from drug dealer to rapper. And on there we got the tracks that everybody knows. I'm talking about Juicy and I'm talking about Big Papa. It climbed to number 3 on the R&B album charts, as well as number 15 on the Billboard Top 200. And yeah, it quickly went platinum. The Source named the Notorious B.I.G. the best new artist, the best live performer, and the best lyricist of the year. He began collaborating with the best of the best, including Michael Jackson. By the end of 1995, he was one of the best and most popular artists going. Now he celebrated this success with his new wife, R&B singer Faith Evans, who he met at a Bad Boy photo shoot. He was also close pals at this time to Shaquille O'Neal as well as Tupac Shakur, but that would all change. Now although today we think of the Notorious B.I.G. as a big cuddly rap legend, well the guy was a scary mofo. He stood at 6'3", was nearly 400 pounds, and the guy was suffering from paranoia. You know, there was a lot of streets inside him, and he was figuring out that people were probably after his money, and well, this resulted in a few episodes where he showed his aggression. In 1995, he beat up a man after a cancelled performance, and later took a baseball bat to a group of rowdy fans. Then of course there was the beef with Tupac Shakur. Now I've already done a Before They Were Dead on Tupac, so let's roll a clip from that. Tupac fell on the other side of violence when he got shot 5 times during a recording studio mugging, and after this incident, well, he was certain the fellows over at Bad Boy, well, they were behind it. But around this time, the feud between East Coast and West Coast was reaching a tipping point. Tupac, along with the Outlaw Immortals, released the diss track Hit 'Em Up, with a lyrical assault on Biggie and Bad Boy. Now in the track, Tupac had claimed to have had sexual relations with Faith Evans, who was Biggie's wife at the time. Yeah. Now not long after Tupac released this song, he would die in a drive-by shooting that took place in Las Vegas, Nevada. After 6 days in the hospital, Tupac passed away on September 13th, 1996. Now around this time, practically everyone was pointing their finger at Biggie. There was also an anti-violence summit held out in Harlem a few weeks later, and practically every hip-hop artist showed up except for Biggie. So the people were like, yeah, something's up. On March 9th, 1997, Biggie exited the Soul Train Music Awards and was sitting in an SUV when another vehicle pulled up to his car and opened fire. Now at the time of his passing, Biggie was only 24 years young. Now, although there has been plenty of speculation and investigations around the shooting, the gunman was never found. The case has never been solved. The leading explanation recently came from a former LAPD detective, Greg Cadding, who worked on Biggie's case. He stated that he had incriminating evidence against Wardle Poochie Foos, a gang member belonging to the mob Puro Bloods. Now, that officer, he was pulled from the case before he could solve it. 3 weeks after the passing of the notorious B.I.G, well, he put out his second album, appropriately titled Life After Death. This record was a giant hit, selling 690,000 copies in its first week and eventually would go 10 times platinum. And off this one, well, we got the singles Hypnotized as well as Mo Money, More Problems. Pop Smoke was born Bashar Baraka Jackson on July 20th, 1999 in Brooklyn, New York. The child of Panamanian and Jamaican parents, he also had one sister.
My pops is Panamanian and my dad is Jamaican. I mean, I say my pops and my dad. My pops is Panamanian and my mom is Jamaican.
All straight.
But, you know, unfortunately, I never really grew with my Jamaican side, you know what I'm saying? But all the doggies is Jamaican, you know what I'm saying? So I grew up with my Panamanians, but you know, doggies, I go to school with bare Jamaicans.
There was family. They hailed from an area known as Canarize, an area with West Indian influence, and it's comprised mainly of working and middle-class residential and commercial buildings, and is located in the southeastern portion of the borough of Brooklyn. Now, in an interview with XXL, Pop Smoke, he explained, "When you're a kid from the hood, you've only got 3 options: play ball, sell drugs, or rap. I did all 3, was good at all of them." Now, when he was 13 years old, he actually took a slap on a Brooklyn street. Now, this was an incident that was filmed, and then it blew up on social media. So I hit the internet, and I was actually able to find an old video, and this one was posted to World Star Hip Hop, so I think this is it. Now, speaking of this altercation, he later stated, "I'm glad it happened as a kid. I realized it's time to boss up. Life ain't sweet." Now, if you're feeling bad for Pop Smoke in that video, well, don't fret. 7 years later, the guy caught up with the same dudes who were giving him a hard time, and it looks like he got his revenge. Now, there might have been a reason why 13-year-old Pop Smoke was getting picked on. Now, at the time, he was a good kid. He actually grew up playing basketball, and he would run the court as a point and shooting guard. Now, his potential in the sport, it even got him relocated to the suburbs of Philadelphia, where he was enrolled at Rock Top Academy. Now, this is one of several prep schools around the country whose sole purpose is to get their students' attention for college basketball scholarships. Now, unfortunately for him, well, they discovered a heart murmur when he was just 15 years old, and that squashed any dreams he ever had of going pro. Now, he couldn't play competitively anymore, but that doesn't mean it stopped him from schooling his friends in his spare time.
Ladies and gentlemen, look at Pop Smoke popping ankles, huh? Look at when it rains, it pours. Look at when it rains, it pours, huh? Buckets! Look at Pop Smoke. Ladies and gentlemen, I guess he was right. They don't want smoke.
With basketball out of the picture, he decided to turn to his other 2 options, rap and drugs. Now, a lifelong fan of 50 Cent, DMX, and Lloyd Banks, well, rap, it seemed like the obvious choice. But before he could make money as a rapper, well, he needed to sell on the streets to get himself ahead. Now, growing up, Pop Smoke, his teenage years, they were described by the New York Times as high risk, high reward. He stated, "You like nice things, you gotta do things to get nice things. At 16, I had a 5 Series. That's not a bad car for 16. So money was good, but that doesn't mean street life. It didn't come with its own problems. Now, eventually, he got kicked out of school for bringing a gun to school, and he also got locked up twice. He was later put on house arrest for 2 years for a weapon charge. Now, after that, he was forced to wear an ankle bracelet as part of a diversion program until the charges were dismissed. Now, when asked what he did during all this time at home, well, he actually explained, "Read. I like to read and a lot of so I'm good." Now, he was also believed to have ties to a Brooklyn gang called 23G Stone Crips, but it wasn't just gangbangers that he was hanging out with. Now, his close friend Jay Guapo, he was mad serious about making it in the rap game, and the 2 of them, they would chill out together at the studio. One night, Guapo, he got so high that he fell asleep, so Pop, he stepped into the booth to try rapping for the first time. The guy just wanted to see if he could actually do it. Now, he used a beat he snagged from a YouTube channel that became his track NPR, and this song, it exploded on Spotify and YouTube absolutely out of nowhere. Now, it wasn't long before he was getting offers, and he signed to Victor Worldwide under Universal Music Group. So Pop Smoke, he decided to get out of gang life while he had a clear shot, and he started getting to work on his new emerging career, but the man, he needed some beats. Now, he decided to return to that YouTube channel where he grabbed his first instrumental, and he touched base with YouTube producer 808 Mello. Now Mello at the time, he was just getting into music while pursuing a degree in graphic design, and the two, they quickly hit it off. They became close collaborators. Now Mello, he actually flew to New York multiple times, and more recently, well, Mello, he produced everything on Meet the Woo Volume 1. So the guys, they're probably, like the best of friends. Now with Pop Smoke's deep, no-nonsense growl type of voice and Mello's UK influence, well, the two developed a new form of drill music the likes of New York hadn't seen in some time. Now following the release of his official mixtape, Welcome to the Woo, in July of 2019, well, word of his music spread quickly, and the single Welcome to the Party, a song that took him 30 minutes to produce at his house, well, it became an unofficial 2019 summer anthem. It was also remixed by the likes of Nicki Minaj and Skepta, so the kid certainly had a hit on his hands. Speaking on his name Pop Smoke, well, he explained to Genius that it's a combination of Papa, a nickname given to him by his Panamanian grandmother, and Smoko Guwap, a nickname given to him by his childhood friends. I'll let him explain, he says it better.
My name was actually Papa. Let me stop it. I'm Panamanian. So my grandma called me Papa, like, you know what I'm saying, since a kid. But my name on the street when I was a kid was Smoko Guwap. Like, that was my IG. So the homeboys didn't want to call me Papa, so they called me Pop. And they just mixed the pop with the smoke, and they just came as one.
Now with a name for himself, he continued to release new tracks entertaining new audiences. There was NPR, there was Flexin', there was PTSD, Dior, and Pop Smoke, he was garnering all the buzz that any young rapper could ever dream of. Now the artist, he was set to perform at Rolling Loud in New York before his criminal past began to bring up some new problems due to his old behaviors. Now along with Casanova, Don Q, Chef G, 22GZ, well, Pop Smoke was pulled from the performing list with Rolling Loud. They then released a statement which read, "The above listed performers have been affiliated with recent acts of violence citywide. The New York City Police Department believes if these individuals are allowed to perform, there will be higher risk of violence." Pop Smoke would have another run-in with the law on accusations that he transported a stolen Rolls-Royce Wraith from California to New York. And the rapper's mother, her house was actually put up as part of the bond deal to get him released from prison. Now speaking about the incident at Rolling Loud and all about his gang activity, well, Pop, he tried to brush the whole thing off. In fact, he stated, "I'm not a gang leader, I'm not a gang banger, I'm none of that. I'm a dog, the woo, that's it, an artist." Now Pop Smoke was definitely trying to put his past behind him. Now in interviews with the New York Times, he stated that he was making music that would speak to young people like him who got to carry their guns to school because it ain't safe, but they still got to make sure they get their diplomas because they mom could be happy. I do it for them. It's pretty tragic news, like a young rapper, they find they're influential and they want to send out the right message, and then something tragic like this happens. It just absolutely sucks. So that takes us to today or yesterday. Now Pop Smoke, he was last seen on social media enjoying his pool at a Hollywood Hills home that he was renting. Now the address, it made its way onto the internet by one of his friends. And we found out later that he was fatally shot and killed during a home invasion. And he was pronounced dead in the early hours of February 19, 2020. It's absolutely tragic. Of course, more information will come forward. We're going to find out who these men were, if they were affiliates or associates or rivals. I'm not really sure at this time. It's tragic to hear this. This kid was an ambassador to music. He was an ambassador to the East Coast. He was going to be an absolutely huge superstar. And it's sad to lose another young talent so early on in his career. When Offset was in elementary school, his family, they moved to Atlanta into the suburbs of Gwinnett County, where he spent the vast majority of his childhood alongside the two other individuals he'd come to form the Migos with. His uncle Quavo and his first cousin once removed, of course, Offset. Now the three of them, they even wound up living together for a number of years in the same small house along with Quavo's mom. That's probably back in the days when they were saying they lived in the bando. Now with all of them being in such relatively close proximity when it comes to age, well, they treated each other more like siblings than anything else. They shared everything they had. In fact, when asked to describe what his relationship with Quavo was like back then, well, Takeoff, he told The Fader, "I don't look at him as my uncle, but more as my brother. but we always have clowned on each other. He is my uncle, so I gotta clown on him. You gotta be funny. A fan of professional wrestling from a very young age, will Takeoff once convinced the other two to help him convert their backyard trampoline into a makeshift wrestling ring so that they could hold impromptu matches against one another. But as much as they enjoyed wrestling, they loved music even more.
I already knew this is what I wanted to do. See what I mean? Since day one. Well, I playing sports. No, you know what I'm saying? No offense. I'm on that, you know what I'm saying? I'm in there in the studio cooking up, so.
Now, all three of these men, they were music fanatics from day one. They listened to everything from old funk and soul records that their aunt kept laying around the house to hip-hop greats like Tupac, b.i.g, T.I, and Goody Mob. But it was Takeoff who spearheaded the trio's decision to get serious about music and to make a career out of it. Now, he downloaded beats from SoundClick and started making demos in the studio, while Quavo and Offset were off participating in sports. Now, in 2017, he described the moment in time to the Fader, telling them, "I was grinding, which is just what I love doing. Just making something and creating for me. I was just getting my own pleasure out of it because it's what I like doing. I'd wait for Quavo to get back from football practice and I'd play my songs for him." So there you have it. If it were not for Takeoff, the Migos likely would never have even happened. The other two guys were playing football. Now, after hearing the kinds of music that Takeoff was creating, well, eventually the other two, they realized that he'd have the right idea, and they decided to drop athletics to pursue a career in music alongside him. So all the jokes about him being left off Bad and Bougie go out the window right there. He's the guy who started the group. Now, Takeoff, Quavo, and Offset, they all began rapping in 2008 under the collective name of Polo Club. Now, it didn't take long for the trio's music to catch the attention of Atlanta great Gucci Mane, who then introduced the group to Kevin Coach K. Lee and Pierre P. Thomas, the founder of the label known as Quality Control. Now, while speaking with Rolling Stone in 2017, well, Thomas would remember what it was like hearing the trio's music for the very first time, where he stated, "The music was crazy, but what made me really want to go hard for them is that they packed all their clothes and moved into the studio, literally lived there, sleeping on reclining chairs and making music all day." Now, this incredible work ethic would result in their 2011 debut mixtape, Jug Season, or Juke Season, Juug. I don't know, it's like the precursor to the Jewel. Anyway, this served as a fresh start for their new group name, now known as the Migos. Now, it would take them another 2 years, but in 2013, well, the Migos, they would drop Versace, their first mainstream hit. Now, I remember way before that, Hannah Montana, and I'm sure you guys know even some far back playbacks that they made in the bando, but still, Versace's the one that really put them on the map. The song was notable for popularizing Migos' signature rapid-fire cadence with modern rap, something that they would come to be known for as the triplet flow. Now, it didn't take long for others to get in on the fun, and before they knew what was happening, well, Toronto rapper Drizzy Drake, he was hopping on a remix of the track, kicking off what would become a long-running association with all three members of the group. Now, afterwards, the Migos, they would continue consistently pumping out one hit after the next, releasing several more mixtapes and a proper studio album with 2015's Young Rich Nation. You know, YRN stands for something else, but Young Rich Nation, you know, you had some executives going, go with that. You know what I mean? We'll get further. Probably keeping that word out. You know, I think so. Who knows? Now, they also scored some top 20 hits with tracks like Fright Night, Handsome and Wealthy, and Look at My Dap. But the group's crowning achievement came with their 2016 collaboration alongside Lil Uzi Vert with Bad and Bougie. Now, the only problem with this song, it didn't particularly feature much of Takeoff. Now, in fact, it didn't feature him rapping at all, and he essentially had to cede his verse to Lil Uzi Vert on the nearly 5.5 minute long single. Needless to say, while Takeoff, he wasn't pleased when the wider world at large, well, they took to making jokes at his expense for being left off the track.
I feel like there's like a running joke with you being left off Bad and Bougie.
I ain't left off Bad and Bougie. You think I'm left off Bad and Bougie?
Say again?
You say I'm left off Bad and Bougie?
What'd you say?
As I mentioned earlier on, he made the group happen, so that argument's done. Now, interestingly enough, Bad and Bougie, well, it wasn't exactly an immediate hit upon release in October of 2016, but a steady stream of viral buzz, it helped propel it up the ranks until it finally reached the top of the Billboard Hot 100 in January of 2017. Now, that same month, well, the Migos, they made the very wise business decision to drop their second studio album, Culture, which debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and spawned 2 additional successful singles with T-Shirt and Slippery. The following year, the Migos would drop Culture 2, and later in 2018, well, Takeoff would release his very own debut solo album titled The Last Rocket. Now, much like him with his first entry, well, Culture 2, it climbed to the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100, while Takeoff's solo effort, it would do pretty well for itself as well, rocketing to the number 4 spot on that same list. Now, a couple years later, when Culture 3 dropped in June of 2021, well, it only climbed as high as the 2nd spot on Billboard 200. And the following year, well, Takeoff and Quavo, they would separate from Offset to release their first album as a duo, only built for Infinity Links. And this featured the lead single, Hotel Lobby. Now, finally, Takeoff, he was definitely getting his flowers. He was stepping up. Offset, he was with Cardi. So yeah, all good here. All still brotherly love. Like I mentioned, the split from Offset, it wasn't meant to be taken as the end of the Migos, but due to circumstances, Cardi B, beyond their control, well, these 3 men, they would tragically never have the chance to team up again. When you think about that, wow, it really sinks in. On October 31st, 2022, Takeoff, Quavo, and music executive Jazz Prince, well, they were driving around the city of Houston celebrating Prince's birthday. Now, hours before everything would go to hell in a handbag, well, the trio stopped off at a local bowling alley known as 810 Billiards and Bowling, where Takeoff would post a pic of himself lighting up just outside the place. This picture is important because when news spread and people were like, this isn't happening, that photo was the indication that, well, he's wearing the same clothes. I was up at 5 a.m. seeing this happen. People are like, is this for real? Man. Now, hours later, police, they would have responded around 2:30 a.m. to reports of a shooting, only to find dozens of people gathered on a balcony outside of the bowling alley, which is on the 3rd floor of the building. Now, officers discovered 1 man dead upon their arrival. And that man, well, it would turn out to be Takeoff. Seriously, guards who were in the area, they admitted to having heard the shootings, but they were not close enough to see who did it. Now, that being said, there were around 40 to 50 people in the bowling alley when everything went down, and reports stemming from eyewitnesses suggesting that Takeoff and Quavo were playing dice when an altercation broke out and someone opened fire. Now, shooting Takeoff then in the process, and it's said to have been his head or near his head. Was pronounced dead on the scene. Fuck, man. This is fucked. Now, 2 other people on the premises were also taken to the hospital in private vehicles, while Quavo was by all accounts unharmed. Early reports said that he as well had been shot. Never happened. Now, of course, once the news broke, the entire hip-hop community, well, they reacted in shock, surprise, and sadness. Now, Bow Wow, he would reflect on having just been to a Kevin Hart comedy show with the now-deceased rapper. While Ja Rule, he would plead for all this recent senseless killing of rappers, it's gotta come to a stop. And Ja Rule there, we added him because he's not wrong in what he's saying. It seems like damn near every week I'm creating a new video here in honor of a hip-hop artist taken far, far too soon. I'm like almost a decade older than these guys, and I'm outliving them. How'd that happen? I mean, they got more talent than me. They're doing more for the world. Now, honestly, Takeoff, he might be the biggest star yet to see his life snuffed out, and this time as senseless as it was, over dice. I mean, when are things gonna change? What will it take? Now, I'm not gonna pretend like I have the answers to those questions. All I can do is hope that the rest of the world is asking themselves those same things, and that maybe eventually we can all agree to figure out a way to make it come to an end. xxxtentacion was born Jose Onfroy on January 23rd, 1998 in Plantation, Florida, to Dwayne Ricardo Onfroy and Cleopatra Bernard. Now, his grandmother was very involved with his upbringing, as were his aunts and some of his father's other girlfriends. Now, when it comes to his half-sister, Ariana, I talked about her in the Before They Were Gone video, and well, some of you guys didn't believe that she was his sister. One of you guys even commented, do better research next time. This is not X's sister, and she is not even related to him. Just go over to her Instagram. There is a statement where she has addressed it. Now, actually, if you do go over to her Instagram, you're gonna see pretty much nothing but proof that she is in fact his sister. There, she shares several home videos of the family together and pictures of herself with a young Jose. Even one she captures, "Forever my brother." Now, there was obviously also some tension at points between the pair, as she once posted to her YouTube channel video called Q&A/Why I Don't Speak to xxxtentacion, my brother. But yeah, there's no question. The 2 of them shared the same father, and well, they spent some time growing up together.
That's my mom. And that's me. And obviously that's Jossie, you know.
By the way, a lot of you guys were also asking me about how to find her on YouTube. Well, her channel is called Bad Gyal Ari. She is also on Twitter at Ari Cartel and on Instagram at Bad Gyal Ari. That's with 5 eyes. And well, that little clip I just showed you, it is from a video called Childhood Chronicles, My True Childhood with xxxtentacion. Now in that video, Ariana says that Jose was living with them for about a year before his mom came to get him. Now for more on X's childhood or his come up, you can certainly check out my Before They Were Gone or my Before They Were Famous video I did on the young icon. But needless to say, he was a remarkable and talented figure who made a permanent mark on the history of hip hop. While controversy surrounded his career with no shortage of beefs, violent episodes, and legal issues, he was clearly beginning to turn over a new leaf in the final months of his life. In fact, on Monday afternoon, June 18, 2018, X posted his final Instagram story where he stated, "Planning a charity event for this weekend, Florida." Now at the time he was shopping for motorcycles at Riva Motorsport in Deerfield Beach, and it was there while sitting in his BMW that he was approached by 2 assailants and shot. Now witnesses at the time, they failed to find a pulse, and X was in a comatose condition when he was rushed to the hospital. And then, well, he died soon after. And man, the guy was only 20 years old.
Another life was lost, another talented individual, and it's just sad, but we have not solved it yet.
2 days later, the police arrested one suspect in connection with the murder, a fact that X's mom learned while at a candlelight vigil for her son.
They arrested them, that means they got him.
They got him. The suspect arrested was Dedrick D. Williams, and according to TMZ, has previous arrests for cocaine possession, weapons possession, domestic violence, and aggravated assault with a firearm. Now during one incident in 2014, he had allegedly held a gun to his girlfriend's head, and according to arrest records, he has at least 11 felonies. Now based on his Instagram account, it seems that the suspect is a tattoo artist. Now I'm obviously not going to shout out this guy's account, I don't want to build up his clout, but he's already grown by 15,000 followers since his arrest. Now on June 5th, he ironically posted a photo of himself in his uniform, capturing it, "Thank God I ain't dead or behind bars." Well, thankfully he is now. And last year he also posted a kinda disturbing message. "I'll go on a murkin' spree and kill your whole family." But prior to the arrest, witnesses of the shooting had described not one, but 2 suspects, both black men, wearing hoodies. Now the shooter was wearing a red mask and both fled in a dark colored SUV. Now investigators had originally claimed the killing may have been a robbery gone wrong, as a Louis Vuitton bag was stolen out of his car. Now prior to any arrest being made, suspicion quickly turned to 2 other rappers known as Soldier Kid and Soldier Jojo. And the day after the murder, well, Kid released a new music video via Worldstar, and well, take a look for yourself if you see anything suspicious.
I can beat these faded, I can beat these fake it, you ain't beat my dangerous.
Yeah, Soldier Jojo also posted a picture of himself wearing a red mask on Instagram back on June 2nd. And both rappers, well, they appeared in a since deleted photo on Kid's Instagram page, posing in a convertible with a red mask. Now Kid had also posted on Instagram that same day that he had picked up food from Hook Fish and Chicken, a mere 10 minutes away from where X's shooting took place. And in that photo, well, a gun is clearly visible. Still, Soldier Kid denied that he had anything to do with the crime, once again via Instagram. "I've been seeing a lot of things going on social media saying I had something to do with X's passing. I don't even know who the man was, you feel me? But listen, all my condolences go to the man's family. I ain't had nothing to do with it, but I'm gonna stay positive, keep my head up, you feel me? Like I always do." His next post would be a picture of X, which he captioned, "RIP to a powerful soul. Sad how people let social media convict an innocent teenager, but I don't have to explain myself to anyone, justice will be served." Soldier Jojo also denied any involvement, and before setting his Instagram account to private, well, he posted this video.
"From what I know, Cuz was a real ass nigga, you feel me? I respect Cuz. And y'all got me f***ed up for keep saying we did this shit, like what the f***. We respect everybody, straight up. We ain't with none of that crowd and shit, man. I respect that man."
Now I do need to remind you guys that these guys have obviously not been found guilty at the time of this recording, or have any connection to the crime that we know of thus far. And the suspect, well, he doesn't seem to have any clear connections to the rappers. At the same time though, the ridiculous number of coincidences has yet to be explained. Now another coincidence in this case also emerged after X's passing, with numerous media outlets quoting a video he made which seemed to foreshadow his own death. X had said, "If I'm gonna die, I want to make sure that my life made at least 5 million kids happy, or they found some sort of answers or resolve in my life, regardless of the negative around my name." Now fans clearly did find something special in his music. A crowd gathered on Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles to pay homage to the departed star. The crowd of up to 1,000 people arrived at the impromptu memorial, organized by Adam22, which apparently started out peacefully. But eventually Eventually, things got out of hand. The LAPD claimed that during the gathering, the group threw rocks and bottles at officers and blocked the street in traffic. One officer claims he was hit by a brick. The cops then responded to the scene in riot gear and used pepper balls and rubber bullets. Over in Florida, hundreds gathered peacefully at the site of his murder on Tuesday, and they brought flowers and wrote remembrances and tributes in chalk on the sidewalk. One unwelcome guest at the vigil was his ex-girlfriend, Geneva Ayala, who also wrote on Instagram, "They kicked me out the vigil, so damn disrespectful. I can't believe people are that selfish. I wasn't even there 25 minutes and I literally got pulled away from the memorial. I just wanted to say I wasn't bothering anyone. This is unfair. I'm absolutely devastated. They burnt the shit I left. They burned what I brought for him. I'm so mad, like I'm screaming." The crowd was obviously responding to the perceived hostility between the pair. After all, X's ongoing legal issues at the time of his death were surrounding the domestic abuse she suffered at his hands. But while his fans seemed to think she would be happy or relieved about his death, she took to Twitter to dispel that idea. She wrote, "I know y'all don't f with me, but this isn't about me. Just please stop tagging me in disrespectful threads and arguments. I honestly don't care for any of the hype. I lost someone close to me. Leave me alone." She continued, "It's disgusting that people are speaking for me. I don't care if no one cared about me however many months ago. I didn't lose my life. He did. It's permanent. I'm still here. Like, how do you think that makes me feel? Everyone expecting me to be relieved or happy? No, I'm broken." On a more positive note, since X's death, well, Ayala, she has received a number of donations to her GoFundMe to cover her medical bills. Well, originally she had set up a crowdfunding page in October of 2016, but has received more than $6,000 in just the past 2 days, bringing her total donations to over $31,000. Now, the medical costs, they were incurred due to X's alleged domestic abuse. She describes the injuries on her GoFundMe page in part. "There are 2 fractures in my left eye socket due to an aggressive hit, along the nose and jaw fractures. Since these bones are fractured, they're piercing into the back of my eyeball, causing damage to an optical nerve and my eye itself." Whether X was guilty of causing that damage or not, I think we can all agree it's a good thing that she got this fixed. Because, well, it sounds pretty rough. Now, at the time of X's death, he had been working on 2 unreleased projects, a mixtape titled I Need Jesus and a studio album titled Skins. Just when these recordings will see the light of day, that still remains to be seen. But Diplo has said that X had recently messaged him and wanted to see if him and Skrillex could help him finish his next album. So maybe that's something we'll see come to pass. When it comes to X's new interest in charity, Ski Mask the Slump God, well, he has said that he would like to take over the charity event he was planning and also make it a day of remembrance. When tragic news hits, people handle it in all sorts of different ways. I know when I heard the news of X's passing, I was tempted to step outside and light up a good old-fashioned cigarette. That's right, your boy McCrudden is a smoker, or at least I used to be. I've since found a new alternative through my collaboration with Candy Pens, and it's allowed me to find a better aromatherapeutic way to not only deal with stress, but to relax and, enjoy myself from time to time. Now, Candy Pens, they also have strong ties to the rap and hip hop community, with co-signs from the like of DJ Khaled, Amber Rose, Young M.A., and xxxtentacion's fellow 2017 freshman class list member, P&B Rock. Now remember, Candy Pens, they are for adults 18 years and older, and I've got a promo code to get you 25% off your entire order. There's a link down below. And thanks to Candy Pens for the sponsorship, it allows me to keep doing what we do here on this never-changing platform. There's been a silver lining to this tragic story with the reveal that X's girlfriend is pregnant with his child. His mother took to Instagram stating, "He left us a final gift." Now, the identity of the mother has yet to be revealed. Now, there are still many aspects of X's legacy that have yet to unfold. I'm sure I'll be keeping you guys updated as more information comes to light.
Memphis-based rapper Young Dolph is in the news today for all the wrong reasons. In fact, the worst possible ones. He was tragically gunned down and killed on the afternoon of November 17th outside of a local Memphis bakery. At this point, there has been no suspect named, and police are still working to figure out a possible motivation for the killing. Dolph first emerged into the mainstream as an exciting new voice in the Memphis rap scene about 5 years ago with his debut studio album, King of Memphis. Since then, he released a further 7 albums while guiding a talented roster of young rappers signed to his paper route empire. It was a remarkable turnaround for a young man whose parents had to give him up as an infant and ship him off to his grandmother's due to their substance abuse issues. Today, we're going to reflect on his story and try to understand how we wound up here, mourning the loss of one of hip-hop's most talented acts, Young Dolph. Young Dolph was born Adolph Thornton Jr. on July 27, 1985 in Chicago, Illinois. Born to parents addicted to crack, Dolph was shipped off with his brothers to live with his grandmother in Memphis at only 2 years old. As the oldest of his brothers, all Dolph ever wanted to do was provide for his family. Growing up in Memphis, he only saw one potential way to do so. In 2018, he told The Guardian, "You've been seeing it for so long that you start to partake in it." On the streets of Memphis, there were two primary hoods, Magnolia and Castalia. Dolph grew up in the Magnolia area, and even back then, Castalia kids would swing by the rival school looking to stir up trouble. Every adult told Dolph and his friends to ignore the other kids, but that was far easier said than done. He continued to tell The Guardian, "Of course, everyone's grandma and parents were like, don't walk up past that corner, but we wanted to go past where the action is. We were in 4th, 5th, and 6th grades, seeing this living hell." When Dolph was just 9 years old, he watched from his grandmother's window as a man was killed in a drive-by shooting right outside his own home. It was a memory that Dolph would later turn into a hard-hitting lyric to his single Preach, a track that would usher in his rap career and allow him to start charging more than $20,000 per gig. After developing his passion for music throughout his teenage years, young Dolph determined that a career in hip-hop was his best way out of the streets of Memphis. Around 2008, shortly after graduating high school, he began releasing a series of mixtapes of he and his friends freestyling with one another. Back then, he dropped these tapes under his own Paper Route Empire label, and over the course of his career, he had eventually funneled over $3 million into both his career and label. By 2014, Dolph was steadily picking up steam while still relegated to nightclubs in smaller cities like Pensacola, Florida, where he could earn as much as $72,000 a week performing. Then, in 2016, he finally made his Billboard 200 debut thanks to his studio album King of Memphis. From that point forward, 11 different projects of his would wind up on those same charts, with 3 of them breaking into the top 10, including 2 collaboration albums with Key Glock, Dumb and Dumber, and Dumb and Dumber 2, both of which peaked at the 8th spot. His final solo album, Rich Slave, would be his 3rd album that climbed all the way to the number 4 spot. Sure, last year there was a bit of confusion when it seemed like Dolph was ready to call it quits and hang up the microphone for good to focus on his family as well as his stable of talented young artists at Paper Route Empire. But thankfully his son did talk him out of it. "My son just told me I can't be his dad if I stop putting out music." I mean, I'm not sure if there's anybody who could reject an ultimatum like that, so young Dolph returned, delivering us some seminal works like the aforementioned Dumb and Dumber 2, Rich Slave, and singles like Sunshine. Those last few projects were recorded during the pandemic, and Dolph told GQ that the best part about the year was getting to spend all that extra time with his kids. He told them, "We watching movies, we having toy gunfights, we on the trampoline, we doing everything. We playing. I'm in their world right now." For what would wind up becoming the last year of his life, I doubt that Dolph would have rather spent it any other way. But before we get into the tragic events of his passing, first a little bit more context. Before losing his life in November of 2021, young Dolph had been targeted twice in the past. Both events occurred in 2017, and many have speculated that allegedly the rapper Yo Gotti was involved. Gotti is a veteran rapper from the same city as Dolph, so it seems like these two should have something in common and maybe even share some love for one another, but that just simply is not the case.
Text message showing y'all this from all this back and forth for a year and a half, 2 years of, "Oh man, we need to sign Dolph." I said, "No, I'm straight."
Apparently, Dolph once shut down Gotti when Gotti came looking to sign the up-and-coming rapper to his label, CMG. Dolph refused because he didn't believe Gotti would invest the type of capital into his career that Dolph himself was willing to. But what started off as a slight diss somehow snowballed into something much more. In February of 2017, Dolph dropped the diss track, Play With Yo Bitch, where he taunted Gotti over the failed deal. A few weeks later, Dolph's SUV was targeted by shooters in Charlotte, North Carolina. The car was absolutely riddled with bullets, but thankfully no one was hurt. Not wanting a killer story to pass him by, Dolph worked what happened into his new album called Bulletproof and recorded that sucker in just 3 days, creating artwork that showed himself standing on a lot littered with shell casings. And if I do say so myself, this is one of the hardest album covers ever. The project also features the song 100 Shots, in which Dolph taunts Gotti with the line, "How the f you miss a whole 100 shots?" The answer to that question would apparently be because Dolph had the foresight to custom build his SUV with bulletproof material for around $300,000. A short time later, CMG artist Black Youngsta turned himself in as a person of interest in the case, but refusing to admit having done the deed, saying, I ain't fire nothing, I ain't seen nothing, I ain't do nothing. He was released shortly after, then about 4 months later, Dolph was attacked once again outside the Loews Hollywood Hotel in Los Angeles, and this time unfortunately the bullets would find their mark. He was shot 3 times, twice in the leg and once in the arm, but managed to stumble into a shoe shop to call for help. He said at the time, "I saw so much blood coming out, and I sat up against the wall. I really was paranoid because I didn't know if I was dehydrated or whatnot from drinking lean." At the time of the attack, Gotti's entourage was also staying at the same hotel. A friend of his, Corey McClendon, was later arrested for the attack on Dolph, but released the next day with no charges filed. As for Dolph, he was sent off to the hospital where he would spend the next few weeks recuperating from his extensive injuries, even filming parts of his music video for Believe Me while he was still an inpatient. When asked by The Guardian why people wanted him dead, Dolph replied, "You gotta ask them. But I ain't a person that lives in fear. You got some people who really worry about that kind of shit. I don't." On November 17th, 2021, in the early stages of the afternoon, young Dolph was visiting a local Memphis bakery that only a few days prior he had called his favorite in the entire city.
Get some wood.
All I came for to get some Makita.
Makita cook. Get the sign.
Come back around here.
Go back around there.
These right here.
What you got? Chocolate chip. Don't hide.
Straight out the
Just for you. Appreciate you, buddy. Be safe.
That clip was from 7 days before his untimely passing. Maurice Hill, the owner of the shop where the altercation took place, Makeda's Butter Cookies, told media outlets that Dolph simply walked into his store to buy some cookies around 1 p.m. That's when at least 2 people drove up, exited their vehicles, pulled out weapons, and shot Dolph to death. When police arrived at the scene, Dolph's Ferrari was still parked outside and there were bullet casings everywhere. Suspects have yet to be named, but police have released footage of the shooters who were wearing masks at the time of the attack. As news broke out about what happened online, people from all over flocked to the scene of the crime to see what had happened for themselves. Tensions flared and raw emotion was everywhere. At times, chaos broke out, especially when a car with another man who had apparently been shot drove into the crime scene. This person was soon taken away by paramedics. Unfortunately, young Dolph did not survive from his extensive injuries, and he passed away at the age of only 36 and leaves behind a son and a daughter. We here at Before They Were Famous send our well wishes and prayers out to young Dolph's family, especially his 2 children. God only knows how difficult these times must be for them right now. You know, as far as my relationship with young Dolph's music, I was a listener, but I think the thing that always stood out to me about young Dolph was that he was truly a man of the people and strong morals. I really need to share this clip because I think it so well encapsulates the man that young Dolph was.
They fired 2 workers from a coffee shop for bumping my shit in the store. Until y'all get y'all a new job, till y'all find y'all a new job, I got $20,000 for y'all right now.
Yeah, man, this one really hurt. At least for me, I know how much of a man of the culture and the people that young Dolph was, and it just sucks keep seeing these young men, these young black men, these men of any age dying so early. I think black men deserve to live long, you know? That's kind of what's been on my mind since this news broke. Now, you've probably heard the saying that scars shape us before. I mean, after all, what better reminder do we have of all those difficult times that we've somehow managed to survive? But few rappers alive today carry as many literal scars on their body as rapper Big Scar. At this point, damn near the man's entire body is a living reminder of the trials and tribulations that he's faced to get to where he is today. One of South Memphis's most promising young artists, in a short amount of time since his debut, he's already racked up over 193 million lifetime views on YouTube and locked himself down a contract with Gucci Mane's The New 1017 imprint under Atlantic Records. So how did this young man survive being thrown through a windshield of a stolen vehicle only to then take that tragedy and turn it into a kick-ass origin story? Well, stay tuned for our newest episode of Before They're Famous to find out. Big Scar was born Alexander Woods on April 7th, 2000, and he grew up in the Magnolia neighborhood of South Memphis. Unbelievably, one of 9 siblings, Scar was sent to live with his grandmother soon after he was born, where he stayed until the age of 13. Sadly, at that point, she would pass away from lung cancer.
Yeah, I was raised by my grandma until I was 14. I was raised by my grandma until I was 14. So it was just me, her, my granddad, and my sister in the household together, like South Memphis.
Yeah.
In the middle of South Memphis.
You feel like you was the man of the house at that point, huh? Like, was it?
I was actually a young then, like I was just on some young.
Yeah.
After losing her, Scar moved in with his father, who would wind up teaching his son all the necessary tools to survive on the dangerous streets of South Memphis. In the bio of his 1017 Records profile, Scar states, "Real talk, my dad showed me how to be a man. He was in the streets, but he was always able to take care of me and my brothers and sisters and make sure we had what we needed. Everything I know, I learned from him. The streets, how to be disciplined, and about God." That's my dog right there. Yeah, great to see black fathers playing such a good influence in their sons' lives. While his pop was teaching him how to maneuver on the streets, Scar was also trying to make it through school. But it was just never something that he was particularly invested or interested in. He usually wound up skipping classes all day long, and when he did bother showing up, he'd goof off and turn into the class clown. Before long, Scar was dropping out of high school and jumping off the porch by joining the Grape Street Crips at the age of just 15 to face the South Memphis environment head on.
15. I jumped out at age 15. I joined my first gang, Grape Street. I'm Grape Street Crip. I joined first gang 15, jumped out the porch at 15.
But the most dangerous thing that ever happened to him in his teenage years was a horrific car accident that nearly claimed his life. At the age of 16, Scar was traveling in a stolen car alongside one of his close friends and some girls when he clipped an 18-wheeler trying to run a light, which sent Scar flying through the front windshield.
And waking up in the ambulance, they put my clothes on.
Oh, shit.
My face was out. I don't remember nothing. I ain't remember nothing then, but it came back to me after a while.
He somehow miraculously survived the accident, but his face was left heavily scarred with abrasions on his eyes, nose, and the side of his face. It was a terrifying moment, but one that would inspire the name that we all know him as now, Big Scar.
Probably, I was in the hospital about 4 or 5 days. It wasn't even a week. I was in the hospital a week.
Is that how you got the nickname, Big Scar?
That's how I got the name.
Considering Scar's eventual success as one of Memphis's most promising rappers, it might surprise you to learn that in his youth, Scar never really considered music as a possible career path. Back then, he might listen to acts like Kodak Black and Boozy Badass, or even Gucci Mane, but it was never with the intent to fashion himself after them. He liked their music, sure, but they didn't necessarily influence him in any meaningful way, at least not at first. He told DJ Booth, "I don't really have any influences because my dream wasn't being a rapper, so I ain't never look up to no shit like that." So what exactly changed? Well, his good friend, Baby K, who was trying to make it as a rapper himself, was brutally honest with the high school dropout. One day, he reportedly told Scar, "I ain't gonna lie, you're gonna have to do something. Try something, because I ain't gonna be able to hold your hand." Recognizing how much Baby K was enjoying his rap career, Scar decided to give it a try, and lo and behold, it worked out perfectly for him so far.
I don't think people believe me when I say this. Make a play, this is my first fucking song. I knew something was gonna happen, I'm finna get a little kick off in this shit. I ain't expect this shit to move like this. Move fast as hell, this shit happened quick.
Only 2 years ago, at the tail end of 2019, Scar would make his musical debut with his single, Make a Play, dropping that beauty over on his SoundCloud profile and an accompanying music video on YouTube.
Man, that was so hard. God damn, bro, this track has the potential to be a future classic. Definitely co-sign this track. Big Scar, Make a Play. Go and check it out.
Much to his own surprise, the single generated some major buzz, and before he knew it, his cousin, Pooh Shiesty, had reached out to him, making introductions with Gucci Mane along with the rest of the folks over at 1017 Records. Thanks to this introduction from his cuz, Scar would become 1017's newest signee after Gucci went absolutely crazy listening to Scar's early work. But by signing to 1017 Records, Big Scar's story has more or less come full circle. He noted, "It ain't no question, WAP is a legend. He's my mama's favorite rapper. We used to ride around in the car listening to him. It's crazy I'm signed to him now." Then, just as everything was taking off for Big Scar, it all almost came crashing down. Just as Big Scar was getting set to take over the world of hip-hop, he caught a bullet that nearly ended his life. Well, actually, that might be a bit of a hyperbole, and it really depends on who you're talking to. For instance, according to Big Scar's doctors, he was in for the fight of his life, but according to Big Scar himself, things were blown out of proportion. He told DJ Booth, "The doctors just be talking. They were saying I was in critical condition only because I wasn't talking. I wasn't trying to talk to them. The bullet was in my hip, but by me moving, it traveled up to my spine." Hold on, so let me just get this straight so we're all on the same page here. A bullet entering your hip and traveling up your spine, resulting in the removal of your appendix to save your life, isn't a big deal. I don't know, man. Big Scar may just be the toughest dude on the Memphis streets. And guess what? That wasn't even the full extent of his injuries. He continued by saying, "My right leg, they had to put back together. I still can't feel my leg from my knee up to my hip." And yet Big Scar would bounce back better than ever to reclaim his spot on the fast track to hip-hop ascendancy. Soon after recovering from his injuries, he teamed up with fellow 1017 members Pooh Shiesty and Fujiano for his single So Icy Boys, which would launch a series of sequels over the subsequent months. Then further solo singles like I Would Keep Going, Trap House, Dead Ops, and more would set the stage for Scar's debut studio album, Big Grim Reaper, which dropped in April of 2021 and would peak at the 25 spot on the Billboard 200.
I'll give about an 8.
8?
8.5.
I go with a 9.
I'll go 8.5. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
By embracing the dangers of his past and highlighting the physical reminders they've left behind, Big Scar has managed to transform himself into one of hip-hop's realest superstars.
Excited me about having my first child is me being able to share my love, you know.
Before King Von would hook up with Lil Durk and the two rappers would collab several times, tour together, and King Von would join the OTF Collective. Before King Von would collaborate with NLE Choppa, Polo G, T Grizzly, G Herbo, Lil Durk, YNW Melly, and more, King Von was born and raised in the crime-ridden O Block neighborhood. After beginning to rap in 2018, King Von caught the interest of Chicago flag bearer Lil Durk and was welcomed into the Only Family Collective. Following up to his early single Problems, King Von broke into the map with Crazy Story, which streamed over 200 million times and currently boasts over 55 million views on YouTube at the time of this recording. This success was followed with his debut album Grandson Volume 1, which broke out onto Billboard 200, and from there his success would continue to snowball. But coming up on the mean streets of Chicago meant that Von was no stranger to gang violence and having run-ins with the law. In fact, he spent his fair share of time locked up over the years, including 2 years when he was just a teenager. As Von was well on his way to becoming one of the biggest superstars in the rap game, reports began circulating that an altercation and shooting took place outside of a hookah lounge in Atlanta. King Von was one of 3 men who were shot and killed in this needless altercation. As the rap community mourns the loss of one of the brightest up-and-coming stars of 2020, let me fill you in on who and why King Von was so special. What's going on, guys? My name is Marlon Palmer, and with a heavy heart, bringing you Gone But Not Forgotten on King Von. We've attached a charity to this video, and any revenue earned off ads will be donated to this cause. Share your support and condolences for Von, his friends, and family. Now let's get into this video. King Von was born Davon Bennett on August 9th, 1994 in the south side of Chicago. He grew up in the Parkway Gardens complex, otherwise known as O Block, a place that he still reps like crazy to this day.
It'd be decent over there, cause they got all type of shit over there, and that's what it'd be fun. And so I take the hoes to the O. It's like a little, what you wanna call it, a mini resort, I wanna say. But the O, they got like hotel room, free rooms, like that.
This building complex is otherwise known as Parkway Gardens, and it's the same area that produced Chief Keef.
With 35 buildings and nearly 700 units, it quickly became a premier housing choice for African-American families. As time passed, however, years of absentee ownership, deteriorating conditions, and a small but violent criminal element took their toll.
King Von's mother did her very best by her kids, but poverty and violence were a part of everyday life for most people that grew up in this part of Chicago. In fact, Von never even got the chance to know his father because he was locked up before Von was born, and then subsequently passed away.
His father was, he was like back and forth in jail, like he was locked up most of the time, and then he passed away. So he was there when he was able to be there.
Despite the streets being a huge part of his upbringing, Von has always denied ever joining up with a gang when he was young.
Like a regular hood, I was with my homies and shit, all my friends, so we grew up playing, you know, kicking in the shit. Then we got older, still kicking it, but other shit got to happen, so you know how that go.
In fact, he tried to focus on having a normal life by playing baseball, where he played first base shortstop. He told XXL, "I used to play baseball. I was playing even in high school. I fuck with that shit." But of course, even with other things to focus on, growing up on the south side of Chicago meant that it was nearly impossible to avoid trouble. King Von started off small enough. At first, he'd steal just bikes in middle school. But by the time he was attending Hyde Park High School, he was going to jail at 16 after being arrested and booked for unlawful possession of a firearm.
Right, it's just like, it's easier to go on the block than it is to go to school. Like, you know, and it's easier to just be careless and not doing shit, just doing bad shit, like bad shit. Easy to do than good shit, you know what I'm saying?
While he was still attending Hyde Park, he became friends with G Herbo and struck up a friendship that would ultimately result in King Von realizing what he wanted to do with his life. He told Complex, "That's my boy, and now we're on tour together.
He's younger than me. I was like a junior, and when he was a freshman. I was a junior, and then I went right to jail. I was getting in trouble, then he gets to rapping, and I'm seeing him going up from jail. Then I started rapping. For the next 10 years, King Von would never spend more than a full year outside of prison. In fact, he never even graduated from Hyde Park after being arrested and spending a whole bunch of time in juvie. He did manage to earn his GED while locked up over the years, but he never actually held a job other than the work he'd put in the streets. Then he was only still 19 years old. He was arrested again, this time in connection with a shooting that took place in May of 2014. He was charged with first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder.
I got charged with it when I was 19, 2014. When I was 19 years old, and they let me out when I was like, 23.
King Von sat in prison for over 3.5 years while the legal team did its thing. Then the trial finally took place. It only lasted 5 days. One of the men arrested with Von was sentenced to over 20 years of jail time. But Von, who never once cooperated with authorities, was acquitted and walked out of prison a free man. After overcoming a murder rap that would have put him away for life, Von turned to inspirations like Lil Wayne, Gucci Mane, and his childhood friend G Herbo to look for a path off the streets. He began drawing from urban novels and things he had experienced on the streets to create his own lyrics, and met up with a friend and mentor, Lil Durk.
When I got locked up for the drama and shit, Durk was the main one supporting me and helping me. So we got even closer when I was just in jail. Then I got out. He flew me out there with him and got the rapping. So me and Durk, we like.
Together, they started cranking out banger after banger, and within 6 months, Von had a series of viral hits on his hands, like Crazy Story. Despite pulling from true-to-life stories for his music, King Von isn't a fool, and he knew that he had to obfuscate some facts to make sure that he didn't wind up locked up again. He told Complex, "I'm not gonna tell you about nothing I did. Hell nah. I'm not gonna tell you about it if it's real. Who'd I rob? You hear some in the music, but I'm just telling you stories. I'm an artist with this. I'm never gonna give you anybody's name or anything." Remaining loyal to the boys who helped you get where you are has always been an important facet for the life of King Von and his friend Lil Durk, who signed Von to his Only the Family label in 2018.
He can hire people like King Von.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Von wouldn't be able to get a job nowhere else probably.
Oh, what?
Shit, when you get to that line, have you ever been convicted of...
He could then start making...
Have you ever been
No
arrested
experiences doing nothing, I ain't,
Despite the success King Von was achieving, old issues cropped back up in early 2019, and he and Lil Durk were arrested for attempted murder in Atlanta, Georgia.
They were hanging out, they went to a studio to make music.
The rapper and Bennett listened to the evidence against them in court. Police told the judge later that night the victim, Banks, Bennett, and others went to a nightclub, a gas station, and ended up in the parking lot of the Varsity. That's when Weatherspoon said he was robbed and shot.
King Von and Lil Durk's lawyer argued that both men were simply defending themselves during an altercation that saw one man shot in the leg and $30,000 up and disappear. Von and Durk were both eventually released on $300,000 bail. In September of 2019, Von dropped Grandson Volume 1, which peaked at number 75 on the Billboard 200 and 37 on the hip-hop R&B chart. He followed that up less than 6 months later with his second studio album, LeVon James, which found even more success, peaking at number 63 on the US Billboard 200 and 36 on the hip-hop R&B charts. LeVon even made it all the way to number 10 on the US Indie Billboard charts. Recently, King Von has just dropped his newest album, Welcome to O Block, in October of 2020, which was received well by fans, critics, and the rap community. Speaking on the album, Von told Complex, "If you're doing something and keep doing it, you're gonna get better results. Everything better. It is the one for real. I've been working hard." While celebrating his success, King Von was hanging at an Atlanta nightclub and hookah lounge on November 6th. At around 3:20 a.m., 2 groups of men, one of them associated with rapper Quando Rondo, got into a confrontation. The dispute quickly escalated in a shootout, which 2 police officers attempted to break up with additional gunfire. 3 people were killed and 3 others were wounded. Von was transported to the hospital in critical condition and died later that day. The rap community is still mourning from another tragic loss that's become all too common an occurrence. Our prayers and condolences go out to his family, his friends, and those who loved him.